So welcome to the extraordinary meeting of Council this evening. I'm the Mayor of Rugby Council, Barbara Brown, and I'll be chairing the meeting. This meeting is being web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, councillors, as you know, if you wish to speak, please use the push button on the microphone in front of you and indicate by using that you wish to speak and you will be called. I'd like to welcome members of the public in the gallery who are here to observe the meeting. I would, however, ask that you don't attempt to participate in the proceedings. And before we begin the formal agenda, I will ask the Chief Executive to provide details of the evacuation procedure.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Good evening all. There is no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm does sound, then please make your way out of the doors of the building, down the main staircase, out of the main doors of the Town Hall and congregate at the entrance to Caldecott Park. An officer of the Council will give instructions when it's safe to return to the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Before we begin the meeting properly, can I call on Councillor Morin, who is not going to be called on at all? Thank you. So sorry. He will be later on, don't worry. But forgive me, I thought there was something special going to happen there, but apparently there's not. So can we move straight to apologies for absence, please? Are there any apologies, Chief Executive?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have apologies from Councillors Howling, Poole, Russell and Thomas.
Thank you. Now we move on to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of December 2025. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of December 2025 be approved and adopted. Who will second the motion, please?
I will second the motion.
Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those against, please show. Any abstentions? Motion's carried. Thank you. Now we move on to declarations of interest. Can I remind members that when they declare interests, they must also declare the general nature of that interest. So, are there any declarations under non-pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors? Any non-pecuniary? Councillor?
This is a good start. Yes, Madam Mayor. Local plan as a member of Warwickshire Wildlife Trust.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Are there any of those?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tim Willis, I'm Chair of Wolston Parish Council, so therefore with regard to the local plan item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Willis. Any more? Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Agenda item 6B, item 3, as a trustee of Fareham Youth Partnership.
Thank you, Councillor New. Right, we move on to pecuniary interests, please. As defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors, do we have any pecuniary interests? Councillor Roothouse.
Changing rooms as chair of Fareham Youth Partnership, been involved with the architects and some of the monetary side of that, so I better not be in the room when you go through that.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, move on then. Any statements under Section 106 Local Government Finance Act 1992, please? Non-payment of community charge or council tax. Thank you. Good. Right, we can move on now to, it says Mayor's announcements on the agenda. Actually, given the length of the agenda this evening, there aren't any formal Mayor's announcements. We're moving straight on to item 5, questions pursuant to Standing Order 10. Do we have any questions, Chief Executive?
Madam Mayor, there are no questions this evening.
Thank you. So now, Rugby Borough Local Plan 2025 to 2042, Regulation 19, consultation and submission, Report of Cabinet dated 6th of January 2026. Due to the number of members of the public here this evening to observe the debate relating to the local plan, I intend to take this item first separately to the remaining reports of Cabinet on the 6th of January. So rather than treat it all as a block, we're taking this one separately. Councillor Robinson, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 1 of the report titled Rugby Borough Local Plan 2025 to 2042, Regulation 19, Consultation and Submission?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I so move.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Robinson, would you like to introduce?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, I'm very pleased to be introducing this paper to ask Council to agree that the proposed submission of local plan is published for Regulation 19 consultation. The plan sets out how Rugby Borough will grow up to 2042. It is not simply about meeting development needs, it is also about ensuring development ensuring development prioritises quality, protects our landscapes, supports our communities, and directs growth to the most sustainable locations. The plan is based on the government's standard method for housing need and provides a total identified supply of 11,729 homes, including a modest 8.5% buffer to ensure delivery. As members would expect, Rugby Town is the primary focus for growth, accommodating over 75% of the new housing. This reflects Rugby's role as the borough's only town with the greatest concentration of jobs, services and public transport. Members will also recall that we committed to increasing delivery within the town centre as part of the regeneration strategy. This plan now delivers on that commitment. Town centre allocations have been increased, supported by direct engagement with landowners and developers to ensure sites are viable and genuinely deliverable. This will make a better use of brownfield land and also regenerate the town to increase footfall. Alongside this, the plan takes a more balanced approach than previous local plans. It recognises that the role of our main rural settlements and directs development towards villages where it can help sustain schools, shops and community facilities. Where development is proposed within the Greenbelt, boundaries have only been adjusted where exceptional circumstances are demonstrated and where development contributes to long-term sustainability. The allocation to the south of Long Lawford is a clear example of this, supporting the village school, delivering new amenities and strengthening walking, cycling and public transport links into Rugby, including a safe walking route for secondary school children. Turning next to the overarching strategic themes of this plan that have steered the new policies. The plan prioritises quality of development and well-being. All new homes will be required to meet nationally described space standards, be accessible and adaptable, and include adequate private outdoor space. These policies ensure homes are fit for modern living, inclusive, and capable of meeting people's needs throughout their lives. Environmental protection is fundamental to the strategy. The plan designates the Rainsbrook Valley as a landscape of elevated sensitivity, requiring development to protect landscape character, important views, heritage assets, recreational routes and tranquility. The plan also defines areas of separation between Rugby Town and nearby villages, including Clifton upon Dunsmore, Dunchurch and Thurleston. These policies are vital in preventing coalescence and protecting the distinct identity of our communities. Green infrastructure and climate resilience are also strongly embedded. Major developments will be required to significantly increase tree canopy cover, prioritising the retention of existing trees and delivering new planting where appropriate. This will bring benefits of biodiversity, urban cooling, air quality and mental well-being. Strong environmental protection policies also ensure that development does not result in unacceptable impacts from noise, air quality, light pollution or land contamination, and that both new and existing residents enjoy a good standard of amenity. The plan sets a clear ambition on climate change. New buildings will be required to be net zero carbon in operation, delivering ultra-low energy performance, fossil fuel-free heating and on-site renewable energy generation wherever practical. These measures will reduce carbon emissions, improve comfort and help lower energy bills over time. Chair, members, before I close, I want to reflect briefly on process and timing. This local plan has been considered through scrutiny. Scrutiny concluded that the plan should progress to Council and there was no request for it to be referred back to Cabinet for reconsideration. During that process, the Chief Planning Officer clearly explained the risks of delay. Members were advised that postponing submission could mean missing the window before forthcoming changes to the national policy, and that without an up-to-date local plan and a 5-year housing land supply, the Council's ability to manage development would be significantly weakened. In that situation, development becomes far harder to resist, even on sites not included in our strategy, and decisions are increasingly taken out of local hands through appeals. In the worst case, the borough could face many years without an effective plan in place. Members should also be clear about where we are now. It is too late to make material changes to the strategy or site allocations before examination. Minor updates can be made under delegated powers, and we do have some plans in train for doing that, looking at feedback, for example, that we've received about uncertainty around the wording of wildlife corridors, protections for nature. We will strengthen some of the wording, but these are not material changes. So, but that said, the plan is not yet set in stone, even when it goes out to consultation on the 30th, if we all vote for it. The planning inspector can and will require modifications if improvements are needed to ensure the plan is sound. So there are still more steps along the way. That is the purpose of examination. So the decision before Council tonight is therefore whether to allow this plan to be tested or whether to risk losing control over where and how development happens. I believe this is a balanced, evidence-led and responsible plan, ably steered by Chief Planning Officer and a highly professional team. I commend the paper to Council.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, I'm aware that there's an amendment that's been circulated. So I'm going to ask Councillor Ward, please, to move the amendment.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I so move the Conservative amendment to the recommendations as circulated.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, do you accept the amendment? But before you do that, Councillor Ward, do you have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I'll second it and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor. Now it's back to you. Do you accept the amendment?
Madam Mayor, I do not accept the amendment on the basis of the speech that I've just given.
Thank you. Councillor Ward, I'm going to ask you in a moment to speak to your amendment and then we'll go into debate after that. Can I remind people, please, that it's a 5-minute limit on speeches on occasions like this, and you will be timed. Okay, thank you. Councillor Ward, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we have alternative sites that we want you to consider. Therefore, we would like you to pause the consultation until the next appropriate council meeting. The draft local plan published on the 19th of December 2025 is undoubtedly an improvement over the deeply flawed and undeliverable proposal set out in the preferred options stage back in March 2025. We're pleased that a lot of the feedback was taken on board for some of the areas. However, we remain concerned by several of the allocations proposed, including in the rural settlements of Wolvie, Long Lawford, Woolston and Brinklow, as well as the proposal to reallocate land at Coton Park East for employment use rather than the proposed use for residential. My question on that is, are we really allowing landowners and developers to dictate? And this begs the question of, what's the point of having a local plan if we're just going to let this happen? I'm going to move on to the ward I represent, Woolston and the Lawfords. My fellow colleague, Councillor Willis, will talk about the proposals at Woolston, so I'm going to focus on Long Lawford, where I actually live as well. And other councillors will talk about their wards. So in the last 20 years, Long Lawford has had 6 major developments. The population has grown from around 2,800 to approximately 5,000. This further proposal of 650 plus properties is likely to take that population to around 7,000, or if not more. And the thing there is, at what point do we say a village isn't a village anymore? And it completely strips the heart out of and soul out of the community. That's not to mention the further strain on the infrastructure. Obviously, I'm trying to be pragmatic here. Our proposal recommendations are requesting the removal of site 316, which is 400 houses. The Coventry Road already floods along there when we have significant rain, and this is going to put more pressure on that, as well as infrastructure as a whole. Site 253 was a new addition of 250 houses on top of the original 400. Now, this site mentions having the safe access, as Councillor Robinson's already alluded to, for children going to secondary school. So Bilton High is the secondary school that's allocated for children in the village. Now, a lot of you will be aware I've been doing a campaign myself, and lots of residents, over 1,000 residents, signed my petition for a footpath on Bilton Lane. My concern with the proposals being put forward with this being added in there is when I talk of the 6th development going on in Long Lawford at the moment, that's had outline planning for a good 20, 25 years. So it's only just in the last year that that's kind of been progressing. So my concern really is that children can't wait 20 years or more for that to come forward. So what I'm essentially saying is we don't know when that development will come. And that's needed now, because obviously we don't want something serious to happen. And from my petition, I was in a position where I thought County Council were actually listening to my petition and looking at possible ways of putting something into Bilton Lane. So I worry that this could push it back further. Whilst I get the idea, the suggestion of it, I just worry that how long that's going to take. I will leave it there because I want other councillors to speak about their wards as well. But the only other thing that I did want to add was that we weren't allowed to put this forward as an amendment. It was more as an amendment to the recommendations. And through you, Madam Mayor, if I may, could I just ask the Chief Officer for Legal and Governance just to explain this, please, for members and for the public as well, just so they're aware.
Yes, of course.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the advice I set out to members of all parties when they inquired of me how they could do this, how this amendment could proceed, was that I explained that the contents of the Cabinet report cannot be amended. What can be amended are the recommendations. They are akin to a motion, and I did have the law and the detailed references to explain this should anyone wish to discuss with me afterwards. But I made it clear to all parties prior to the weekend that any recommendation tonight had to be to, any amendment tonight, had to be to the recommendations of the Cabinet report, not the Cabinet report itself. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'm aware that the Chief Executive issued an email containing officer advice relating to this amendment earlier this evening. And I think that possibly not all councillors will have had a chance to review this. So I'm going to ask the Chief Executive to read out that email, please, so we've got a shared understanding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and apologies for the length of this. The email read, given the importance of the matter before Council this evening and the detail contained within the main report regarding the local plan, I considered it incumbent upon me to ensure that councillors are properly advised on the implications of the proposed amendment. Having sought advice from the Chief Planning Officer, the implications of accepting the proposed amendment would include the following. Firstly, on timelines, the proposed amendments would materially alter the proposed submission local plan and could not be made as minor amendments under the delegation recommended within the report. The proposed changes would necessitate the cancellation of the Regulation 19 consultation and referral of the plan back to officers to make updates to evidence with a view to bringing the plan back to Cabinet and Council later in 2026. The postponement of submission of the plan for examination would necessitate extending the plan period to beyond 2043 to ensure there is a likelihood of the plan having the requisite 15 years to run on adoption, which in turn would increase the numbers of housing required. There would be a material risk that the Council would fail to meet the Government's deadline of the end of 2026 for submitting a plan for examination under the current system. In relation to small windfall assumption in policy S2, the small site windfall assumption of 50 units per year is justified based on past delivery rates as set out in a report published as part of the evidence base. There is not a justification in the evidence base for increasing the windfall assumption. Any increase in the windfall allowance would need to be done by extending the size of the sites that are counted as windfalls. To avoid double counting against some of the urban site allocations, existing allocations would need to be deleted from the plan and subsumed into windfall instead. This would remove 30 units from the supply. Overall, the prospects of the Council being able to produce evidence to justify the proposed additional windfall assumption are at best uncertain. In relation to Site 64, Coton Park East, in response to the issues and options consultation and a call for sites in 2023, the site was put forward for employment development. The landowner cited a lack of interest on the part of house builders in developing the site. The landowner has entered into a legally binding promotion agreement with an employment developer. The current agreement between the parties does not allow for an alternative, and neither party is seeking that. Overall, officers' advice is that it would be unlikely to be possible to demonstrate that a residential allocation of this site would be effective and sound. If a proposed allocation of the site for residential development were to be advanced, the Council would need to also substantially increase the level of headroom or buffer in the plan. This would mean identifying additional housing allocations to accommodate 475 homes. The proposed amendment would leave the local plan circa 100,000 square metres short of meeting its assessed employment land floor space requirements. A plan could not be submitted on this basis. It would have no prospect of being found sound. A new site or sites would need to be introduced to the plan to make up for the loss of employment floor space at Coton Park East before the plan could be progressed. In relation to the land at Walgraves Hill, Site 121, and the land north of Holton, Site 130, this potential change was identified as one of the reasonable alternatives in the sustainability report. It formed Scenario 3 of that report. The Sustainability Appraisal Report identifies the proposed submission local plan, including land at Walsgrave Hill, as performing better than Scenario 3 on several matters, including economy and employment land and on transport. Overall, the change proposed to employment land allocations is not cosmetic. It is a fundamental change to spatial strategy that would be at odds with the current evidence base. And before implementing such a change, significant further work would be needed in relation to matters including transport impacts and sustainability appraisals. In conclusion, there are major changes to the plan presented which would have significant implications on the delivery of a plan which is sound and in the timeframes set out. These amendments pose significant risk to the delivery of a local plan which would likely result in significant speculative development over the coming years, of which the Council would have little power to resist. A fuller assessment of the proposed amendments is available to councillors upon request. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that was helpful. Simon, do you want to reply to that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll leave that to others to speak on the matter as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And that was terribly informal of me, Councillor Ward. His first name's apologise. Okay, moving along. I am going to call for speakers now, open this up to debate. Please, by lighting your lights, can you indicate you wish to speak? Councillor Moran.
Madam Mayor, can I just point a clarification or point of order? Is there two opportunities to speak, one on the amendment and then later on the local plan, or are we just singly speaking on
Thank you.
Two
It's one on
chances.
the amendment and then later on the local plan.
If I may, Madam Mayor, while I'm standing up,
Right.
I was going to try and go down a really sort of particularly legal route here, but I get told off for being nasty, so I'm going to keep this very friendly in the way that I want this to continue. Respectfully, Madam Mayor, that was awkward, because the advice that the Chief Executive read out is the advice that planning officers have been presenting to members for the last year plus, that there are legal requirements, there are planning guidelines, that, you know, creating a local plan isn't some grand panacea of, you know, of what we want. There is an element of having to stick to the rules. And I'm genuinely surprised that a group of such experience, who have led Rugby Council for most of the last 50 years, are so unfamiliar with planning guidance, because this is really risky, what you're proposing. Councillor Ward, you very eloquently said how terrible it would be to allow developers to dictate, and they're not. The developer in Curtin Park East isn't dictating regarding employment land. That was put forward through the process and it was assessed. The point being here, we, the council, cannot dictate to that developer to build housing. That's ridiculous. We'd look shambolic in front of an inspector. It's instantly unsound. But we know that. So my question then is, to the Conservative group, is clearly you're aware of the advice that we've had. So can you confirm, did you have your own independent legal advice or planning advice to substantiate this amendment? Because in the absence of that, it just sows seeds of, you know, dispute and controversy where that's not appropriate. So can they come back to me on that, please?
Thank you, Councillor. Any more speakers, please, on the amendment? Thank you. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm most grateful for the Chief Executive outlining what from his email, because I didn't see that email. I was too busy getting here. My concern is in the Conservative proposal was they're pushing so much more back onto the urban area, particularly when you consider the growth of flats that we've seen within the town centre, and whether those flats have viable amenity space, whether they have viable parking, are they on ease of access to local schools. That matters, because in many instances, certainly with flats, you are dependent on public open space for your amenity. But if we crowd them in and create loads and loads of HMOs all within the urban area, the quality of life for those people will drop significantly. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Thank you. Councillor Garcia, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Right, I'm going to take this opportunity to comment on the Labour and Liberals local plan, and I'm primarily going to focus on Brinklow. Brinklow is surrounded by Greenbelt. It has a castle site that has the same protection as Stonehenge. It is a conservation area. It has 26 listed buildings, and it sits on the old Roman road, the Foss Way.
Councillor Garcia, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, and I know how passionate you are about this. Can we keep this to the second part after we've discussed the amendment, please?
Well, it is focusing on the amendment, if you let me get to it.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
This is what I would call a heritage treasure in our borough. Brinklow is a small rural settlement. The scale of proposed growth represents a disproportionate expansion relative to existing size and services. It is nearly doubling the size of the village, and no other village is taking on this level of growth. This is not development that enhances rural vitality, but growth that fundamentally alters character. Without infrastructure, Brinklow will lose its identity. The people of Brinklow are not NIMBYs. They have identified other small sites that can accommodate 100+ dwellings, which is a 25% growth. This is a much more sympathetic and sustainable way of growing a village and maintaining its character. Paragraph 92 of the NPPF requires planning decisions to support safe and inclusive communities, and the cumulative impact of housing growth without service undermines community cohesion, increases isolation and creates long-term safety risks for children and families. Soundness in a plan requires them to be effective and justified. The local plan does not assess long-term public liabilities, including escalating home to school transport costs. These hidden costs undermine the justification of the strategy. The proposal significantly affects views from the conservation area. This urban scale of development jars with the landscape and impacts on views bearing no relationship to the village. The NPPF requires development to be genuinely sustainable, reducing the need to travel and prioritising safe, accessible transport options. Brinklow Parish has no secondary school and no primary school capacity. Children would be required to travel 3.5 miles or more to primary schools and over 6 miles to secondary schools, along unlit rural roads with no pavements and very fast-moving traffic. This directly conflicts with the presumption in favour of sustainable development. Strategic policies must make sufficient provision for education and ensure infrastructure is deliverable. The local plan does not identify where additional school places for Brinklow will be provided, how capacity will be expanded, or how safe access will be achieved. Reliance on long-distance transport is not provision, it is a mitigation of failure. Plans must be based on realistic assumptions about delivery. In Brinklow, education across depends on permanent and council-funded home-to-school transport, including chaperoned buses for primary pupils and SEN transport. These are unfunded revenue costs, not secured through developer contributions, undermining the plan's effectiveness. Development should create safe and suitable access for all users, including pedestrians and cyclists. Highway assessments for Brinklow focuses on vehicle capacity rather than child safety. There are no safe routes to school strategy, no pavements, no lighting and no traffic calming. The NPPF is clear about the infrastructure that should be in place or secured at the right time. For Brinklow, education and transport infrastructure is assumed to follow development, with no triggers preventing occupation before solutions are delivered. This shifts the risk to residents and the council.
Councillor, that's 5 minutes.
Can I have two more? One more?
Very tiny, short amount of time.
We are constantly being told by the Labour and Liberal groups that we must vote for this plan or we will be left to speculative developers. Whilst it's preferable to have controlled development with an adopted local plan, but as land can only be released from the Greenbelt through the local plan process, Brinklow is unlikely to experience speculative development that will nearly double the village size. To sum up, Brinklow does not mind growth, but good growth and done in a sustainable way. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor, and you can always come back in the second part of the debate as well.
I didn't realise.
That's okay.
Thank you so much.
Any more speakers? Councillor Modis.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, fellow councillors, I want to approach this debate in a spirit of fairness and realism and to ask colleagues to look carefully at whether this plan is credible, deliverable and consistent with the values this council has publicly committed to. Firstly, the evidence. In 2016, a comprehensive landscape assessment was carried out by a professional landscape architect. With the exception of one small site, the areas now proposed for development around Wolvie were identified as highly sensitive and unsuitable for development. This was not a political judgment, it was a professional independent evidence. Yet in the current report, those same beautiful green belts surrounding Wolvie have suddenly been reclassified as having much lower sensitivity and are now deemed ripe for development, all in the name of meeting the government's target of 1.5 million homes, and yet government statistics show that house building nationally is down by 6%. Those same areas are now assessed as having much lower sensitivity without any material change on the ground. That alone should give us pause. Secondly, credibility and deliverability. Wolvie is being asked to accommodate 210 new homes. Under the previous plan, 110 homes were allocated. One site of 95 homes is still not sold out, and the second site of 15 homes is not commenced because the developer does not believe demand exists. So this is not a theoretical concern, it is a lived experience. If we cannot deliver what has already been approved, then allocating almost double that number risks undermining the credibility of this plan and exposing the council to challenge. Third, fairness and environmental consistency. Much has been said, rightly, about protecting the Rainsbrook Valley, but the Anchor Valley in Wolvie is of equal environmental value. It sits at the level of the village wetland, is prone to flooding and supports protected wildlife, including otters and birds of prey. This is not about resisting development in principle. In fact, the parish council, reluctantly, has suggested relocating development to a less ecologically sensitive site if housing must be imposed. That's a pragmatic, not ideological position. If we protect one valley but sacrifice another of equal value, we invite accusations of inconsistency and unfairness. This matters even more given our own policy commitments. Wolvie has the lowest sustainability score of all the main rural settlements. This council has declared a climate emergency. Allocating large-scale development in a location that is highly car-dependent with limited access to services and employment sits uneasily with that declaration. A dispersal strategy may tick a numerical box, but it also locks in increased car use and permanent loss of green fields, consequences that cannot be reversed. I recognise the pressures that this council is under. I'm sure colleagues will point to the grey belt review that also impacts my area, but I'm deeply concerned that land currently protected as green belt is, in practice, being reclassified as grey belt, losing the very protections that the greenbelt status is meant to provide. Housing delivery in Rugby Borough last year reached just over a quarter of what was forecast, with only 364 equivalent Band D homes added to the tax base. That context matters when assessing what is realistic, not just what is desirable. And I am realistic enough to accept that we must plan for a worst-case outcome. If colleagues are unwilling to protect the Anchor Valley outright, then we still have a responsibility to ensure that the damage is not made worse than it needs to be. Development requirements exist precisely for that reason, to make the unacceptable less harmful where development is imposed. On the land between Wolvie Village and the fishing lakes, advice from the Parish Council, Warwickshire Wildlife Trust and this council's own sustainability consultants has been set aside. At present, the only specific constraints proposed relate to transport, while the River Anchor and its valley are left effectively unprotected. Even the Chief Planning Officer has acknowledged at scrutiny that existing development requirements elsewhere were inadequate and needed strengthening before Regulation 19. That principle must apply here too. If development is forced upon Wolvie, then robust, enforceable development requirements to safeguard the River Anchor and its ecology are the absolute minimum that residents should expect. So my position tonight is a reluctant one. I'm going to support the amendment because in the circumstances we face, it represents the least harmful option available. That's not a partisan decision, it's a practical one. I'll end with a simple appeal to colleagues on all sides. If we're prepared to protect the Rainsbrook Valley, then in fairness, consistency and environmental integrity demand that we offer the same protection to the Anchor Valley. If we fail to do so, the residents of Wolvie will rightly feel that they have been treated as expendable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any more speakers on the amendment? Bearing in mind that you can always say what you have to say in the second part of this discussion. Can I take Councillor Willis first, then Councillor Gillies, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a long time. My name's Tim Willis. I'm one of the 3 Woolston and Lawfords Borough Councillors. I'm also the chair of Woolston Parish Council, the local flood action group, but more importantly, I am a resident of Woolston. There's been much mention in the Chamber over recent months with regards to reasons for becoming a borough councillor. The day job, seeing the bigger picture and walking the talk, all relevant to my comments through the current draft of the local plan. Submission draft, which although much improved and thanks to the portfolio holder and to officers from the preferred options draft, but it does give me and the residents I strive to serve much cause for grave concern. Woolston is the village where I live, and I love where I live, and that is my bigger picture, and the reason I took the decision to stand as a borough councillor prior to becoming chair of the parish council, to serve, support and indeed protect that community when required, flooding and questionable development being just two issues. Woolston has a problem with the latest draft of the plan, specifically with the recently added site at the land north of Warwick Road, Site 136, which had previously been discounted going back to April last year, when I was told in an email, school capacity is a significant constraint at Woolston, but you will see from the local plan evidence that there is another site north of Warwick Road that we thought was potentially suitable for development, but was not included in the preferred options because of the school capacity point. So far, so good. However, the subsequent inclusion of Site 136 in the submission draft for 80 dwellings for people aged 55 plus is just plain wrong. Not least because it missed inclusion in the first round of public consultation, but also because it sits on the edge of the settlement on an incline, a minimum of 850 metres from the nearest shop and 950 metres away from the GP surgery. That's a long and inconvenient journey for anyone, but particularly when you are a member of a potentially vulnerable demographic group. Better then to take the car down to the village, which is already constrained by the very limited parking available, and then worry about the impact on the climate agenda at a later date. Sustainable? There are also other issues to consider, as outlined in my statement to last week's Scrutiny Committee, which I'm happy to circulate to all after this evening's meeting. For 12 of my 20 years at the County Council, my role was to lead its extra care housing with care programme, delivering schemes from Alliston down to Shipston, Ulster across to Southam and Rugby in between. 9 schemes for older people, 12 for younger adults with disabilities, up to 1,000 units. And occasionally there was a foray into the private retirement world, where if affordable units could not be set aside, off-site contributions, for example in Rugby Lime Tree Village, now handy that's been. The former Herbert Gray College, attempting to bring a site forward for retirement with Oak Retirement, led by Dr. Stephen Ladyman. Remember him? Very nice gentleman. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it over the line. You get the gist. This is something that I've dealt with for many years of my life, and this scheme is wrong. And I refer to 5 principles, and planners will be aware of these. When looking at a scheme, that scheme has to be accessible, it has to be acceptable, it has to be affordable, it has to be available, and it has to be achievable. Site 136 isn't. Or is it perhaps a Trojan horse? A little bit like Inwood's House, for example, which has had 2 expired care accommodation consents and is now being developed for 25 houses. The longer game. Is that the game with this site, I wonder? That perhaps the new unitary can find that additional school capacity to then put that site up for development. To conclude, please can I recommend, respectfully, in the true spirit of collaboration, the removal of Site 136 from the latest draft of the plan. And if this is not possible, then please may I repeat my invitation to the portfolio holders to come and visit the village of Woolston, or, as it was playfully called, the independent kingdom of Woolston in this chamber a few weeks ago. First of all, we can take a look at the flooding and the impact of flooding on the village. And then we can take the walk up that incline, a 1.7 kilometre round trip to the nearest point on that site for the older residents who will be using that if development, and I very much doubt you will find a developer to do that, and certainly the customers. Hopefully, colleagues, you now understand my big picture.
That's 5 minutes,
I understand
Councillor.
yours. And I understand the risks. The risks of not having a local plan and the catastrophic impact that can have on our borough. But, ladies and gentlemen, without meaningful engagement and considerations from across the floor, I regret that I will be unable to support the current plan this evening. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Madam
Thank you,
Mayor.
Councillor. Councillor Gillies, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We should see and recognise, even now more than ever, the effect of a local plan on our rural communities. and where more recent planning policy statements indicate to our decision makers that, when prepared well, a local plan coordinates and directs investment in a way that meets the local objectives. And it goes on to say, a good local plan is more than just about planning for the delivery of an area's housing numbers. A plan should be all about what you want to see rather than what you don't. And I think Councillor Garcia has picked up on a lot of the things I wanted to say on Brinklow, allocation of that site 315. But I'd just like to add a little bit more information to those members in the room that probably don't know what's going on just the other side of the A5 at Magna Park. Since the approval of the warehousing at Magna Park in 1984, we have seen a steady build-up and a more recent faster build-up of more and more traffic on the neighbouring rural roads and especially through Brinklow. The neighbouring Harbour District Council are likely to have their local plan fully adopted by the end of 26 or the early 2027. And within that local plan, it has allocated for 300 acres of land for the further expansion east of the giant Wayfair building. This is likely to accommodate another 9 warehouses, bring a total of 60, that's 60 warehouses. Projections indicate it is likely to employ a further 2,000 to 2,500 workers. Many will be driving through the roads through Brinklow and other FOSS villages. For those who don't know, the 1,700 daily HGV movements on and off the whole site, measured in April 2024, is therefore likely to increase to a staggering 2,000 HGV movements every 24 hours of every day. A development of 250 houses in Brinklow will have yet additional impact on the roads. So I'd just like this council, and urge the council, to think again on housing allocation site 315. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hassel, please.
I'd like to talk about the recommendation regarding Coton Park East. Coton Park started about 25 years ago. It has grown year on year, and the final section would link Central Park Drive with the estate. The site plans given out by Persimmon and David Wilson Homes, and in the early days by developers such as Westbury Homes, always showed houses all the way up to the motorway. For over 20 years, that was the plan. However, now AC Lloyd say they can't sell the land for housing, so it needs to be warehousing. As at today, they have not sold the land for warehousing. There are 2 things that contradict that argument. In February 2025, they put in an application for infrastructure and access on the basis of the outline planning permission for 475 houses. Developers build houses next to pylons, railway lines, under the flight path for airports, next to motorways, next to industrial estates. I don't buy the argument they cannot sell for house building. This is a greenfield site next to housing, a primary school and good access to the M1. And since when does a developer get to tell a local authority what their plan needs to look like? That is a decision of the council and the councillors. Why are we all here if it is just a case of asking a developer what they want to do? Coton Park Residents Association was formed on the basis of stopping a pet food factory on Coton Park. Councillor Moran was chair of the group at the time, and he and members there fought hard to stop them and persuaded the planning committee to refuse the planning application. It feels like a kick in the teeth for everyone on Coton Park to see a plan led by Councillor Moran to put warehousing there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any more speakers?
Can I
Councillor
make a
Moore.
personal statement in response to that?
Yes, I think that's fine, isn't it? Yes, thank you.
Councillor Hassel, apologies. You weren't there 20 odd years ago. Coden Park Residents Association was indeed set up to challenge inappropriate development, but it was done in line with planning guidance and planning law. That's the difference. We did it properly then, in line with council policy and national policy.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any more speakers on the amendment? Councillor Picker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I do just want, I have some thoughts on the wider local plan that I'm sure we will come to in due course. So I just want to speak about some of the things on the amendment, and I thank the Chief Executive and the Chief Officer for their comments on the amendment. I think there are two elements to think about here. The first is what is actually being proposed in the substance of the amendment. I think that none of it is insurmountable, and I think some of them are very sensible and practical alterations that could be made to the plan. And I think it's that could that causes the real crux of the issue for us, because as we've heard from the portfolio holder, from the leader of the council, as those of us who attended or watched the scrutiny committee last week found, to a degree, this amendment does carry risk. No one is suggesting otherwise, but we are here to make decisions and take judgments. We are here to listen to the advice of officers and then take our own decisions. But part of the challenge that the administration finds itself in, that we all find ourselves in, is the clock. The clock is running out. Nobody disputes that. That is a material matter of fact. If only somebody had tried to get the process kick-started a little early in order to bring it all forward so that we might have more time. As it is, somebody, I don't want to say who, commented at the time on social media that many, many places, many local authorities function perfectly happy with local plans that are years or even decades out of date. And again, that is sometimes true. But that's usually true when councils have an up-to-date 5-year housing land supply. Does anyone remember what the 5-year housing land supply was when this party was in administration, when this party was in government? I think it was over 6 at the time. It's not anymore for a variety of reasons, most of which can be placed at the door of the Labour government for 2 reasons. The first, and I am conscious that I'm slightly off topic here, Madam Mayor, is...
Just a little bit. You're going to get back on, aren't you, now?
I am always going to get back on topic. The first is the state of the economy. Those of us who have large-scale developments in our area, like Halton, will be aware that those have slowed down considerably for reasons that are, in fairness, completely outside of the control of this administration. The other element is the changes to the National Planning Policy Framework that were made the year before, sorry, which didn't allow us to count the over-delivery of houses in places like Halton, at those big strategic sites that formed the core of development over this time, against our current delivery. So we immediately faced challenges on the 5-year housing land supply that have only been compounded by the wider slowdown in delivery. We've heard it from other councillors here this evening. I'm sure we'll hear more about it later. However, I still think that this amendment proposes a better version of the local plan. It meets some of the challenges that have been raised throughout the consultation process and some of the concerns. However, the amendment is not going to be accepted, and first rule of politics, learn to count. I have no illusions that it is not going to succeed this evening. So what we will do is we will take this further to the inspector. We will encourage other residents to do so. And then that version will come back in, hopefully, early next year. But there is one final sting in the tail. And that is going back to the timeline. Whatever comes back from the inspector, be it this version of the plan, a version more in line with the Conservative amendment, or something completely different. Perhaps the inspector will say, you need to make some education provision. There should be a sustainable urban extension. On the timeline set out, we will have no choice but to accept whatever comes back. There will be no further time.
Thank you, Councillor. If there are no other speakers directly on the amendment, there is. Councillor Timms, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to suggest that our amendment to the Labour Lib Dem local plan submission is helpful, really helpful to you. You have the time to look at these sites and to hold proper consultation with the affected greenbelt areas before you go forward. The submission has to be in by December 2026, so you do have the time. And there is a precedent for this in the last local plan. There are risks associated with the sites that you're suggesting. They're clearly set out in the Cabinet report. There are risks in there. So while there may be risks with this, I suggest there are ones that you should carefully look at. There is an area here. I'm going to talk about employment land at Walsgrave Hill. It's in green belt. And you have a site which is not in green belt. So you're going to take a site and turn that away, not in green belt, and choose to have a green belt site, which was rejected by the inspector in the last local plan. And the planning reasons for that rejection still exist. They're still there. And there's a bit of a clue in the name. Walsgrave Hill is on a hill, and you stick a load of warehousing on the top of it, and you try to put a country park around it. Well, unless you're going to transplant fully grown Canadian redwood trees, I would suggest you're still going to see it from the heritage site, and you're still going to see it in the triple SI that it's next to. It's also on floodplain, level 2 and 3. Green belt is the last place, not the first. And you have the opportunity here to substitute the site 130, which also unlocks improvements to the infrastructure in Rugby, not in Coventry. Wow, wouldn't that be nice? Actually, to have roads at Gibbet Hill improved and the A5 improved alongside Rugby. Wouldn't that be really, really nice? Wouldn't we all like to see that? I bet the people struggling down Leicester Road would. I think you need to really take a close look at that, because there is the opportunity to support the rugby partway through that site, and there is also a lot of monies that it would unlock for Gibbet Hill. Why are you not even considering it? So I would really stress that our amendment is a positive step to you and hand to you. Come on, we will help you. You don't need to have a prolonged public inquiry, which this will result in. You could make this plan so much better very easily. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mackenzie, please.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been pretty extraordinary, really, to have an amendment brought forward contrary to the advice of the Chief Planning Officer. I mean, fundamentally, we have a duty to submit a sound plan, and it's rather extraordinary to have something that brings forward sites that have been discounted for extremely good evidential reasons. The evidence literally doesn't support this amendment. New evidence will have to be commissioned, including traffic, particularly regarding the Halton site, and I'll come on to that in a minute, and sustainability appraisals. But what I actually want to really highlight is what might get through planning permission if there's a delay now about the Reg 19. So once the Reg 19, after the consultation is submitted to the inspector, it gains planning weight. We don't have a 5-year land supply. We are now literally with the developer vultures circling. And if we go round the borough in a circle, what we have the Tritax warehousing application currently submitted, which is for much, much larger warehousing allocation right up to the very sensitive Corston Spinney. We would not be able to rely on the new commissioned landscape study, which shows the sensitivity of that location, and obviously can't rely on, let's be kind, the overlooked for publication study commissioned with the last local plan. The Richborough applications, which got to pre-app stage for more warehouses or even closer to Thurlaston, they could come forward. Taylor Wimpey and Warwickshire County Council could bring forward their rejected housing sites in Dunchurch. Taylor Wimpey could bring forward the rejected housing site in Stretton-on-Dunsmore, rejected because of the poor access on Plot Lane. And perhaps we'll get Stangate on the Lutterworth Road in Brinklow, and the large employment site to the north of Finkley Road near Anstey. These are all really, far developed applications that could get over the line. Then you've got the 180 home application by Richborough, which they've rushed to a non-determination appeal to beat the current timescales of the Reg 19 and the inspector submission, with 160 homes running right across the village separation buffer at Clifton. You've also got the current application for 90 homes off the Ashlawn Road, and there were 2 further developments in the Rainsbrook Valley which were coming forward. Instead, this amendment wants large-scale warehousing north of Hulton. So Hulton will be ringed by warehouses. The trucks might be forced to use the A5, but workers can't be constrained. As Councillor Gilly has pointed out, warehouses bring massive movements of workers on nearby minor roads. They're going to be coming through the Ashlawn Road, Hillmorton, Hulton corridor, or through Clifton. I also note that the Hulton Councillor's Facebook page offered an urgent update on the 26th of January to talk about possible wind turbines near Hulton, although I'm not aware of any plan to bring that forward, but they failed to mention their own plan for large-scale warehousing. If this is better, and they seem very confident that it is, if this is better than the proposed Reg 19 from the Labour and Lib Dems that's on the table, then why not say this directly to your residents? This amendment throws Clifton, Hillmorton, Hulton, Bilton, Dunchurch and Thurlaston under a bus. All of these are Tory areas. So Councillors Daly, Russell, Picker, D. Keeling, J. Keeling, Hassel, Lawrence, Parker, Howling and Simpson-Vince, we're looking forward to see how you vote on this amendment. Your residents will want to know too.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Simpson-Vince.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As ever, when it's something big and you've got to give a speech, you end up with something that's got scribbles all over it. So bear with me. When I timed it earlier, it was less than 5 minutes. Okay, we appreciate the local plan is a huge amount of work for officers, and we all thank them for the time they have spent on this and the many months they've spent on this. The Conservatives are putting forward amendments to the recommendations tonight, because while we think this is a much better version than the previous version of the plan, we're offering recommendations. We know you'll reject them, but there isn't anything radical in here. I feel the plan for consideration this evening is the one we should have had last time, and the cross-party working group has only met once since the publication of the previous version, which was in November. There are things in the local plan that we like: the continued protection of Rainsbrook Valley, and in my ward, taking out the housing sites in Dunchurch and continuing to protect the buffer to Dunchurch and Corston Spinney. However, there are swathes of green belt turning grey, as well as issues around housing and employment land. Large chunks of my ward will go into grey belt. Stretton-on-Dunsmore and Princethorpe and the countryside around them go from green to grey. Grey belt wasn't supposed to be green fields, but now it seems to be open season. That in itself is going to add to the windfall numbers, as those who previously couldn't build there will now feel they can send in applications as they are now in grey belt. How will that be controlled? Whilst it's also popular to say everyone is against new houses, actually we have a site where the residents were fine with houses, on Coton Park East. People have different things that make them decide on a house. Otherwise, we would all want the same one. Some want to live in countryside, in a cottage, in a quiet village. Some want to be in a larger village with transport. Some want a new house in town. People buy houses close to railway lines, for example, some of the ones on Technology Drive. If people are prepared to buy houses on busy roads, next to railway lines, near rivers, driving down a road that has warehouses but is mainly light industrial, to get to your house isn't a deal breaker. So the Coton Park East landowner saying they can't sell the fields for houses doesn't track. In South West Rugby, thankfully you have pulled back from the entire safeguarded space being employment land. But even there, residents were saying that if it couldn't remain a safeguarded space, houses were better than warehouses. They have the original allocation and that is enough. Do we really need all this extra employment land? There are still buildings that Tritax has on Symmetry Park that are not yet sold or leased. We aren't the only ones doing local plans. The South Warwickshire local plan, being put together by Stratford and Warwick District Councils, was originally ahead of this one by about 2 months. Rugby has overtaken them in the timeline, as they are still making changes ahead of Reg 19 consultation. They acknowledge it is tight, but they are still aiming for a 31st of December deadline. Every stage of the plan strengthens the plan. So, yes, we are always going to have, for every local plan, we are always going to have housing applications coming through, employment land applications coming through. But the further along the process we are, and we've finished, Reg 18 is done, and Reg 19 we're getting ready for, strengthens that plan. You've all read our recommendations. This isn't trying to derail the plan. We all know we need the plan to stop us having speculative applications. This is about us trying to make it better. I'm hoping the amendments will be taken in that spirit. I will, of course, be voting for the amendment. If the amendment to recommendations is refused tonight, we will, of course, be submitting it to the planning inspector's examination. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Please, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really appreciate all the impassioned and verbose statements that have been made by everyone in the chamber so far. But one thing that's sticking out to me at the minute is the leader of the council asked, has there been any legal or planning advice to support this amendment? And I've not heard anything about that yet. And I would also like to add, it feels a bit disingenuous when we're having statements of saying we will help you. If you wanted to help us, why were the Conservatives opposite not involved in the Planning Services Working Group when we were working on this before? All feels just a little bit too little, too late. And that's not me saying I don't agree with some of the stuff in there, because I do. But it doesn't feel right. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. If there are no more speakers, can I call on Councillor Robinson, please, right to reply?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So to first come to some of the comments and the tone of the conversation, it is bizarre. I keep having to pinch myself. Is this really happening? I've heard so many contradictions in the comments that have been made from across the chamber. And, from comments like, how will we protect development in the grey belt? Well, by having a plan and getting this plan through is how we protect unwanted development in the grey belt, the green belt, or anywhere else. From Councillor Picker talking about the risks and the clock ticking. So I was sat here trying to understand whether you were arguing for or against your own amendment at times. And I think that just reflects the fundamental disconnect between your amendment and any notion of something coming forward that is evidence-based or even appropriate, I would argue. The amendment, we have ended up talking about sites, you have talked about sites, advocated for villages. Fundamentally, you're still presenting this as a request to amend an officer's report. I'm not really hearing much about what it is you actually want to happen next. So I will paraphrase that for you. What you're suggesting is to delay the course of this plan, for it to go back and look at some new site ideas that you've had at the 11th hour, which you could have talked to us about previously, and you're willing to risk, willing to risk that, delaying the plan, missing the window of opportunity, and then finding that we have no plan till, well, for about, could be easily a decade. So it's just mind-blowing and bizarre, and it feels like a complete waste of the last hour. It feels just like a plea to look like you've been effective and presented something to the table. And frankly, I echo what my colleague has just said. It's too little, too late. You will, as Councillor Picker commented, have your opportunity to present your case, along as will residents. And Councillor Picker, if you would like to argue with the inspector over why the warehouse should be built in Halton instead of a site that has already been allocated by the previous Conservative administration, and inspector has already advised us we're pretty, we're going to be hard to refuse it, and keep with a sound plan. Then it's going to be equally entertaining to watch that unfold. So yeah, I can't imagine a world where this amendment succeeds. I think I will leave it there and let's go to a vote, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
Could I make
Is it okay? Is that allowable?
please, with regard to
Sorry, just wait one moment while I get a ruling. Is this a point of order?
It is.
So, go ahead.
The Planning Services Working Party met in November 2025. No minutes have been published of that meeting. And they met previously in January 2025. So there have been precisely 2 meetings of that Planning Services Working Party in the time that it has taken this plan to put together. And the minutes that are available to the 2 councillors are not on the SharePoint. So I think this too little too late is a definite no-no to be arguing.
Thank you, Councillor. We are going to move to a vote on the amendment. So those in favour of the amendment, please show.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, can I make a request for a recorded vote on this, please?
Sorry, we need other councillors to request it too.
Yeah.
Simpson, Vince, Maureen. Thank you. And about 200 others. That's absolutely fine. Yes, of course we can.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I think, as requested by Councillors Ward, Moran and Simpson Vince, I think it was, that had their hands up. This is a recorded vote on the amendment proposed by Councillor Ward and seconded by Councillor Simpson Vince. I'll call councillors' names individually. If I could ask you to reply with either for, against or abstain. So, Councillor Barnett.
Against.
Councillor Bennett. Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Daly.
For.
Councillor Dumbleton.
Yes.
Councillor Claire Edwards. Councillor Sam Edwards. Councillor Freeman.
Against.
Councillor Garcia.
For.
Councillor Gillias.
For.
Councillor Harrington.
Against.
Councillor Hassel. Councillor Caradier. Councillor Dale Keeling.
For.
Councillor John Keeling. Councillor Lawrence?
For.
Councillor Lewis? Councillor Livesey? Councillor Maudis?
For.
Councillor Mackenzie? Councillor Mistry? Councillor Morin? Councillor New? Councillor O'Rourke? Councillor Parker? Councillor Picker? Councillor Robinson? Councillor Roodhouse? Councillor Sanderson? Councillor Sayani?
Against.
Councillor Simpson Vince? Councillor Srivastava? Sorry, is that against? Against. Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Thompson? Councillor Timms? Councillor Trimble?
Against.
Councillor Ward?
For.
Councillor Willis? Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. Sorry. I wasn't called and I'm against.
How could you miss her out?
Apologies, Councillor Henderson. I did miss your name. Sorry.
Thank you for that. Okay. It's not carried, is it? The motion's lost.
Sorry, yeah, that's 14 votes for and 24 votes against.
So now we return to the substantive motion. We will, if there are people who would like to debate in more detail on the substantive motion, that's absolutely fine. What I would ask you to do is not repeat what you've already said. So if there are new and things that are going to be vital to this debate, brilliant, not just, I want to hear my voice again. Not that I mean you, Councillor Sanderson. Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'm going to stick to the agreed document with regard to policies on biodiversity and local diversity protection. I am very pleased that the officers listened to my representations and that of other members regarding the local nature recovery strategy. This has now been integrated into the adopted local plan, and I feel that's a really good step forward. Again, land use, again using robust materials and predominantly native planting where appropriate. Other things are saying, initially the documents just said walking and cycling. I am so glad that they've now put in walking and wheeling and cycling, because if you're a disabled person or you use a wheelchair or you use a mobility scooter or a disability frame, then wheeling's quite important, that you're not left off the list, that you aren't discriminated against because of your disability. The other one was in Site 59 Newton Manor Lane. Again, looking at ensuring that there is good public space and biodiversity and landscaping included within that document. And again, I think it is, if we're looking at, certainly within the town centre regeneration area, if we're looking at improving accessibility and connectivity, then ensuring that we've got a good policy that encourages walking, wheeling and cycling is a must for that area, which has already been designated for that. And I'm sure both myself, members of Warwickshire Wildlife Trust and those who are involved with the Rugby Cycle group will really welcome these changes to the adopted document. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Livesey, then Councillor Thompson.
There isn't. I represent Coton and Boughton ward, and although there's no new development proposed in the ward, some of my residents will be affected by the proposed development at Coton Park East. And I've had many representations from residents about it, and quite a lot of them from residents in Clifton as well. So my colleagues and I have engaged with residents about this, and as a result, we've worked with the portfolio holder, the leader of the council, and officers to try to mitigate some of those developments, the impact of harm. So we have now got a proposal to extend a road from the end of Castlemound Way so that lorries would be directed around that to the proposed new warehouses. We have also been able to put forward a design code for the area which will control the height of buildings and some of the buffer around the houses and so on. And I just want to say that I'd like to thank all the officers for all the hard work that they've done and for their cooperation and their willingness to indulge me on my really silly questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
So the role of a councillor is to represent your ward, and it's also for the good governance of an area for an area, and inherent with that is fairness. So I want to talk about my ward and pay tribute to Chris, who is a resident, for his knowledge and advocacy, as well as to the New Bilton Community Association for their sort of support, and they're led by Sheila. New Bilton is in the bottom 10% of neighbourhoods in Rugby by multiple deprivation out of 66 in the Rugby area. So it's really far down in terms of deprivation, and it's three-quarters of neighbourhoods are more advanced and less deprived than New Bilton. Its lowest indicators are living environments and with health and disability. There is precious little green space, as well as roads with high volume traffic in the ward, particularly around the old Victorian streets and new builds that surround Rounds Garden. As many of you are aware, and will be aware, instinctively green space is good for health and well-being, and indeed studies have shown that living within 300 metres of green space improves your health indicators. I know that residents who have long been deprived of any meaningful, never mind quality green local space, would very much value the whole of Rounds Garden to be a proper community urban lung and a place of peace and restitution and health improvement and with wildlife. They deserve that space. For too long in recent years, the deprivation was unaddressed and ignored. In fact, my residents would very much like to have a bit of green belt, if they could have it in the town, but for now, defending the little green space that they have and space will be important. However, we also need to deal with social housing. The land limitations of Rounds Garden, due to its geographical features, provide an opportunity to secure some green space and some quality housing. And the dispersal strategy has meant that the needs of the whole of the Rugby area can be spread rather than loading onto an area such as my ward, which has already got high deprivation, no meaningful public green space and poor health indicators. I commend the plan and pay tribute to the portfolio holder and Chief Planning Officer and her team for listening to my residents' representations, along with everyone else's, and putting overall fairness and deliverability at the heart of the plan. This plan positions Rugby for growth, positivity and a beacon of possibility over the next decade. It addresses the needs for quality environment with green canopy cover. It tackles the blight of HMOs, which are a particularly bad blight in my ward, a notable problem for my ward, and it looks to ensure that housing and environment is high quality of design. I commend it.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any more speakers? Councillor Roodhouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Number of points, really. As I look around the chamber tonight, I see a lot of experienced councillors with a lot of knowledge from different positions on this council and coming from different areas. And, you know, they bring that knowledge through this. and they've been portfolio holders. The local plans, as those councillors will know, are processes. It's a process driven by law, by statute, and the rest of it. So once the starting gun is fired, if you like, the race is on. And I remember my colleague, Councillor Sanderson, with one of his usual quips, going, you know, the firing gun has started. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And that's what local plans are. They're not sprints, they are marathons. They're also very emotional things. This would be my, just trying to think now, my third local plan. My first one standing with the land to the east of Rugby. That's all it was called. It's now called Holton. That's when BT and other people owned it at that time. It was land to the east of Rugby, and it was under what was called the WASP at the time, as it went through. And we've gone through that. You know. I now look back at that first local plan I went through and the emotions of the Hill Morton Road, the Ashbourne Road. Some of the same arguments now, just getting worse. I do start to think when the next local plan comes with a unitary, which could be run from Nuneaton, North Warwickshire, Warwick, Stratford, Rugby, who knows, whatever we're going to end up with, you know, what would they have to handle? You know, where does that expansion go? And I think that's a much bigger strategic question, which we can't answer tonight. But what we do need to remind ourselves is that the administration at the time, the Conservative administration, did kick this process off. You know, and it was started off back in December 2022, which has already been mentioned, that process has started. And once that process has started, the clock is ticking all the way through as we go through it. And I was quite clear at the beginning, as I have been through a number of these processes, that number one, the council does not have the 5-year land supply. It was running out quite rapidly at the time, and that's only going to widen, and it's leaving the door open for a wild west of developers and outside people to come in, and we're seeing that happen already. And my colleagues in Stratford, you know, if you think we're in a bad place, just go to Stratford District. I'll tell you, it's even worse. And if you go to some other local district councils, if you think this is bad, this is nowhere near to where they're at. The implications for delay then on this, as we're going through this, could see the borough ending up with whatever a new unitary authority wants to take over. Is that what you really, really want? Sounded like a song then, didn't it? But I mean, but is that what you want? I don't think any of us actually want that from any political party. So tonight the council does face a choice. It either moves forward with the local plan for Regulation 19, or the consultation, or it can delay, or it can prevaricate and play games. So the question tonight for me, is the plan I've got in front of me robust? Is it evidence-based? It's evidence-based, robust, and I'm sure all of us agree there may be some question marks around some of the robustness. But that's why you have the inquiry, that's why you go through Reg 19. That's what the planning inspector wants to test on that. Since the start of this process, before Reg 18, as some of you will know, I've worked with others to gain a new policy which is in the local plan. And that local plan, you know, with my good colleague Councillor Picker and the other Hill Morton councillors and other people who jumped on it as well at the same time. But, you know, around. I used to be the councillor for Hill Morton. So, you know, we can have that debate, but I used to be the county councillor in Hill Morton, and I won't mention the other councillor's name, nor will you. So I did not wait for Reg 18. I didn't wait for anything else. Actually, I started hammering officers from day one. I want Rainsbrook Valley, protected open countryside, that's it, end of story. Lots of stuff coming back from officers, and we can't do it. You know, the usual stuff that we get from officers. Sorry, officers, not trying to make an offence, but you know what I mean. But, you know, but I will not accept it, as the officers found out a few times going through this process. I would not accept it. And I wouldn't be bothered about locked doors, minutes of meetings and stuff like that. I'm the elected member for the area I represent. My voice counts within this chamber, and it counts through a process like this. And I want to make sure it counts, along with my colleagues, Councillor New, Councillor Thomas and other people, to make sure the residents want that Rainsbrook Valley protected. Not with a country park with 90 houses to the edge, but as protected open countryside. And I'm seeking tonight, we've got the policy, but I am seeking an extra bit tonight, because I'm not stopping. I'm seeking assurances from the portfolio holder that she'll meet with the West Northamptonshire District Unitary, to gain a statement of common understanding, and that would actually give us greater weight for Rainsbrook Valley protection, that we have a statement of common understanding. So I'm hoping that the portfolio holder will go and do that. 5 minutes now. So, Madam Mayor, moving the local plan to Regulation 19 consultation does not close the debate. It does not close the debate. I need to repeat that. It starts it. Anybody in the chamber, anybody in the public gallery, anybody looking out there, come to the inquiry, don't stop, because it's a marathon, not a sprint. So the choice tonight is we need to support the recommendation. Delaying this plan for the last-minute manoeuvres is just pure obstruction and actually would destroy Rugby Borough even further.
Councillor Roodhouse, thank you. Your speakers, please. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. The cost of spinning is the reason I'm a councillor. The relentless Conservative focus under the last local plan to choke the lifeblood out of it by building up to 15 metres away from the ancient woodland was immoral. I say relentless because even self-commissioned, I bet non-published evidence didn't sway their decision-making. So I'm pleased to say that this new plan, which is going to the Reg 19 consultation, if voted through tonight, gives 23 hectares, that's about the size of the country park at Draycott, for nature and people alongside the Spinney. I can't roll back the 2019 plan, but I feel we have substantially improved on what we inherited. It provides robust protection for the Rainsbrook Valley, a place that has a near spiritual connection for Rugbyians. Most, if not all of us, will have been at a funeral at Rainsbrook and will have stood afterwards looking over the Rainsbrook Valley. We scatter ashes there. We bury our dead there. We collectively mourn there. This plan gives clear separation zones for Clifton, Dunchurch and Thurlaston before they're entirely subsumed by Rugby. It provides high-scale environmental standards to new housing to dramatically reduce the amount of space heating required. People should not have to choose between heating and eating. Nor should we use energy to heat homes when we know how to design them without the heating load in the first place. It doesn't make sense to put developers' profits ahead of residents' welfare. It sets out new tree canopy policies so that we can start to reforest. By the time the consultation comes out on Friday, it will say that it must be tree species that are native to Rugby Borough area. It sets out larger garden sizes and space requirements for residents, including the overlooked residents of HMOs. It stops homes being sandwiched between two HMOs and limits their density. The town centre residents have been crying out for help in this area. I do understand that there are winners and losers in this process, and I'm sorry for those who feel that they're losing. I'm not immune to how that feels. I've been there. But there are trade-offs, and achieving a safe walking route for children to Bilton School from Long Lawford did seem like a trade-off worth having. The same with achieving a dedicated blue light ambulance route to the hospital, requested by UHCW, also seemed like a trade-off worth having. I appreciate that isn't a universal view, and not all residents feel that the balance was tipped in the right way. Just as I didn't the last time round. Please, however you feel, please do respond to the consultation and get involved in the inspector's examination in public. To those here in the chamber, I'm pleased to support this local plan advancing to the Reg 19 consultation, and I urge my colleagues to vote for that consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Mistry. Councillor Mistry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think for the last hour and a half we talked about building houses and nothing but houses. But I'm going to change the subject tonight. I'm going to talk about economic development. And I came into this town back in the 60s, and for the best part of my life, for nearly 5 decades, 48 and a half years, I worked for a large industry. People have heard of GEC Alstom, English Electric, cement work, all sorts of things, and rugby depended on those industry. And over the last 30 years, it's been demise of those big industrial base that we had in this town. And when we look around for last God knows how many years, we never had a economic strategy. Yeah, how to then have the growth in the houses, but also the economic part of that town that we need to have it. So, Madam Mayor, if we are serious about shaping a stronger, fairer, and more resilient local economy, then this is our moment to step forward with ambitions and clarity. Economic development isn't an abstract concept. It's the backbone of opportunity, engine of our local pride, and the foundation on which thriving communities are built. Today, I want to highlight the practical, targeted, and forward-looking steps that we are taking to unlock that potential within the local plan. First of all, how are we going to support the local business growth? At Cotton Park and Wolsgrave Hill, we are backing the small and medium-sized enterprises that form the lifeblood of our economy. By investing in grow-own units, we are giving local businesses the space, stability, and confidence they need to scale up. These are the companies that create jobs, innovate boldly, keeps prosperity rooted in our communities, and when they grow, Madam Mayor, we grow. And we've got to have a clear vision for the town centre renewal, Madam Mayor. For the first time, we have a coherent, robust policy framework for town centre regeneration. One that doesn't just talk about change, but actively enables it, with site allocations designed to increase footfall and attract new investment in this town. This is about creating vibrant, modern, people-focused town centres that serves as a hub of culture, commerce, and community. And then we have to talk about skills, productivity, and inclusive growth. Our approach is fully aligned with the Council's wider economic strategy. That means a relentless focus on skills, productivity, and inclusive growth. We are ensuring that the local people have the training and opportunity to succeed in a changing economy, and that no community is left behind. Economic development must lift everyone, not just a few. I want to talk about the wider working with our partners within Warwickshire. And we have a strategic advantage. Around Anstey Park, we are accelerating strategic employment growth to build on our region's strength and in manufacturing and research and development. This is a chance to cement Warwickshire's position in the powerhouse of innovation, attracting high-value jobs, supporting advanced industry, and driving prosperity across the wider region. Economic development demands leadership, collaboration, and a willingness to think big. The steps we are taking today will shape the opportunity of tomorrow. Because the future we won't build by itself, but together we absolutely can. Madam Mayor, this proposed local plan is evidence-led, raises standards, and gives community a strong basis on which to engage. Proceeding to Regulation 19, consultation allows residents, businesses, and partners to shape the final version before adoption. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mistry. Sword.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, obviously this evening you've already heard about the proposals that we've been forward from our group. These are things that we believe can help improve the plan. I want to also say there are some good things in this plan that we've seen. You know, the protections for the Rainsbrook Valley that's been mentioned, the removals of sites in Halton and Dunchurch, and I also thank the community groups that have really engaged on those as well, that have really fought for their areas. As I say, you've heard the passion from our group about the proposals we're putting forward. We've been talking about history here. I've heard a bit about history. Now, I'm going to talk about history, but mine is very short history because obviously I only joined this council in May 2022. And it's quite a whirlwind because I think back to a couple of years ago when we were first talking about, when it was a Conservative administration, we were talking about putting forward our local plan and starting the process. Now, at that stage, I know it was the Labour group that really pushed for a partial local plan at the time. Now, I know at that time we had independent consultants came in to give us a bit of advice on that, and they essentially kind of told us what we already knew. And there was one statement that really stood out for me from that, which was, be bold and be nimble. Now, essentially, go for it, but be willing to change along the way. Now, that was back in, I think that was 23, might have even been 2022. Like I say, it's been quite a whirlwind. But what I'm trying to say is, it seems like we've all of a sudden gone from that to now under this pressure here. I know we've got local government reorganisation and all that sort of thing. But just to kind of sum up what I'm trying to say is, so much has happened in that short amount of time. And in terms of voting tonight, our group will be voting individually on what they believe is right for their wards, which we'll obviously see in the vote. I'm sure you won't be surprised that we'll ask for a recorded vote, but we'll do that in a minute. But yeah, I'm just trying to sum up that in a very short space of time of history, a lot can happen as well. And that's kind of the points I'm trying to make. But thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for that. Councillor Henderson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, everyone. I'm not ashamed to say that I still find speaking in this chamber a little bit scary, if I'm honest, and that's because the weight of what we do here is so enormous, and speaking in conferences, absolutely fine, but our responsibility as elected members feels so heavy, and I guess this local plan is a really strong example of the responsibility that we all carry for those that we represent. I don't know how, but this summer marks 8 years since I moved back to Rugby, but I was heavily connected with the town because I grew up in Daventry, just down the road, and Rugby used to be our big night out, our big shopping destination. And when we were looking to start a family, coming back to Rugby, where there was some grandparent help for childcare, was certainly a good option. And we settled on Corston because it felt like the perfect balance between having access to the countryside, which we love and enjoy as keen runners and cyclists, with being a stone's throw from the town centre and all of those amenities. Over the last 8 years, we've seen Corston itself grow significantly with lots of development already underway in the southwest. And I know from our Admiral's constituents that whilst the development to date hasn't directly affected them, they felt the squeeze in the services that they use as a result. I would like to congratulate and thank the colleagues and officers who contributed towards this local plan. Balancing so many needs and wants across the borough is no small task, but they've achieved the optimal balance of meeting their obligations whilst protecting and enhancing the entire borough as much as possible. On behalf of Admirals in Corston, and a little bit myself because I proudly live there, I want to particularly celebrate that there will be no further development in the southwest, including No Lodge Farm, which we know was supported by reform at county level. We all use Dunchurch as a place of destination for coffee and walks, and seeing that be protected going forward is great for us as a neighbouring ward as well. And to echo what Councillor Mackenzie said about protecting Corston Spinney, I couldn't be happier. Such a good news story for woodland and the environment in the area. And finally, an enormous thank you to every single person and organisation that's contributed to the local plan. We all have responsibility as citizens of Rugby in one way or another, and it's a great example of democracy in action, and all views have contributed to this significant piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnett, please.
Mayor, I sort of really wanted to build on what Councillor Mishry was saying in terms of the kind of the economic strategy and where we go forward from there. So I am a representative of Ben Ward. I've lived in Ben Ward for 31 years. I've never not lived in Ben Ward. And one of the main reasons why I ran to be a councillor in the first place was to obviously try to get a fair deal for the Ben Ward. And I'm sure many of you maybe remember I think it must have been the summer of 23, I did quite a long speech about the arts and culture and creating provisions for musicians and otherwise. One thing I see quite a lot in the Ben Ward is there's such a huge cultural community there of artists, musicians, painters, sculptors. You know, you can name all of the arts and they'll be there, and all around rugby as well. And one thing rugby has been missing for a very long time, and it is starting to develop. Ragam have done a lot of work. Councillor O'Rourke has done a lot of work engaging as well with the Love Rugby campaign, etc. It's really great to see. But to see that economic policy coming forward in supporting these sorts of ventures is really important. I've met so many musicians and community organisers that want to get involved and want to make a start-up business or want to provide some sort of platform for people to create, for there to be some sort of cultural hub. And I can see some positive movements towards that. Obviously, I'm going to keep banging that drum, forgive the pun, to make sure that carries through. But it's just nice to see that there's some development there. But then more importantly, in the Ben Ward, we have, well, part of the Ben Ward is the town centre. And the town centre has been a real place of contention and anger for a lot of rugby residents, and rightly so. The criticism that it's a ghost town, it's not up to par, no one goes there anymore. And so what's been really great to see is that the vision within this local plan is that they're trying to build some balance into the town centre. So, I'll read my notes here. So a thriving community depends on the careful alignment of green space, sustainable development and accessible homes. That is why our approach ensures that high-quality green spaces are protected and enhanced while also bringing forward deliverable, well-designed housing sites right at the heart of the town centre. This balance matters. It creates places where people want to live, work and spend time. By enabling more residents to live centrally, we unlock a series of benefits that ripple across the entire community. And I see it all the time. I've worked in 2 bars in the town centre, I worked in the Vic and I worked in the Merchants, played in multiple, cover bands and otherwise awful original bands as well. And I've been all around it, and it's so important, but it is dying, and it has been dying for a long time. The courthouse being closed opposite, I think, is an indicator of that. The Alex, whilst it is now obviously a community and art space, it did also used to be a music space. That is now gone. So I come from a music angle, so do forgive me if I sound biased, but that is being squeezed. I see people now, we call it brain drain, people are leaving to go to Coventry and to Leicester and to bigger cities to take their art elsewhere. This is helping, I think, to keep people and retain people within the town. So more people living in a town centre will increase footfall, bringing life and energy to our streets throughout the day and into the evening. It should support local businesses, giving shops, cafes and services the steady customer base that they need to thrive. It will strengthen the vitality and resilience of the town centre, ensuring it remains a vibrant destination rather than a place people simply pass through. And it will also encourage inward investment, which is really important, attracting new opportunities, new employers, and new confidence in the future of our town. So this is not just about buildings or open spaces, it is about creating a town centre that works for everyone, a place where people feel connected, where businesses can flourish, and where the environment is respected and enhanced. By striking the right balance today, we secure a stronger, greener, and more prosperous town centre for tomorrow. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Can I go to Councillor Gillies, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, I've read through the local plan, draft submission, probably 3 or 4 times, and I can't remember most of it, but but I've got to say, I would imagine that a good proportion is absolutely supportable. Don't find any problem with it at all. Obviously, we've got this disagreement on housing allocation sites. That's the disagreement, isn't it? That's been the conversation. But there are policies in there that I think are absolutely excellent. But I want to pull 2 out, which I have concerns about, and I'd just like to speak on those. Now, some might be thinking, scratching their head, or looking at me with their eyes glazed and everything, what the hell's he talking about? But what I'm saying is all about observations. Observations that I see on a daily basis when I'm driving all around the borough. So the first one is to have a look at the issue of car parking in low access areas, which appears in C3 of Appendix 1. It is clear in many low access rural locations, motor vehicle transport is absolutely essential. Even a one-bedroom property should realistically have 2 parking spaces, simply because it'd be likely to be a first home for a young couple, and both are likely to be working in different directions and locations. So I'd also suggest that 1- and 2-bed properties also have a minimum of 2 spaces. Likewise, 3-bed, 3 spaces, and 4-bed, 4 spaces. Now, there's a logic to that, because when visiting and established recent housing developments in and around Rugby, in the evening, it is clear that on-street parking and indiscriminate parking is common, creating mud baths on what should be pleasant grassed areas and restrictions to footways. On-street parking should be avoided at all costs, and it can be simply addressed through planning policy. Job sorted. The other one is very dangerous. Some people don't see this, but I do see it. Policy EN6, canopy cover, requires serious thought, expert guidance and advice, and adequate regular maintenance, which I have noted in section 5.18 of the policy. Currently witnessed is inappropriate tree planting and unmaintained self-sets, even on new housing estates, some built within inches of planted within inches of built infrastructure, sewage manholes, some are covering highway and footway street lighting columns, important directional and warning signage. Moreover, the abandonment of highway tree maintenance in all areas, which put motorists and pedestrians at risk at times of high winds and any unknown effects of weakened limbs and trunks following high winds, and particularly those trees already leaning out over the highways and footways. Being born and bred in a rural village with rural knowledge, I see extreme danger. To be forewarned is forearmed. Need I say more? I should like to speak more on this subject at such time the Planning Services Working Party is reconstituted. We live in hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. Do we have any more speakers? Councillor Morin, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Gillias, the invitation is always available for councillors to participate in working groups. I was completely thrown I was going to start this, but taking advice from the architect of the current local plan does take the biscuit. I wasn't involved in local politics back then, but I do remember reading the papers and the words of the inspector at the time, and they were not glowing, so I won't embarrass anybody by repeating what the inspector said of the 2019 local plan. But it is relevant here because there's a reason Councillor Picker highlighted the current 5-year land supply issue, and that's because the current local plan is failing. The current local plan puts all its eggs in one basket. The current local plan leaves the council and residents beholden to developers. This approach of a much more deliverable dispersal strategy addresses that. Sometimes it's also easy for comments to be taken out of context. So let me be really clear. While this plan is not perfect, it's very good. And in the context of what has been inherited, damn, it's near excellent. Now, most importantly, I want to be really clear. The process underpinning this plan is robust. It's defendable, and it will ensure that the plan is deemed sound by the inspector. What has become really apparent to me as we've progressed is how different we've managed this local plan to previous ones. And I'm incredibly proud of that. It's evidence-led and it's apolitical. It's been a grown-up approach to a serious topic. I personally have taken my role as, I'd say, chair of the process incredibly seriously. Councillor Roodhouse alluded to hours and hours of debate. Because the point is you have to arrive at a balance. It cannot be anything else. And that's why, having gone through this process, we come out at this stage now. So let me clarify a couple of misconceptions. The Regulation 18 stage was deliberately broad because sites that could meet a certain technical threshold had to be assessed, had to go forward. The easiest way to, for a developer to win an appeal is for his site or her site to be denied at Regulation 18. We have undertaken an independent, robust study of all brownfield sites, ensuring that legislation, we had to follow it. We had to prioritise brownfield sites. But, Councillor Picker, that was one of the studies that was missing originally. There was not an urban capacity study. Let me clarify another point of misconception. This 2,000 figure that could miraculously be found, 2,000 units we were ignoring in the town centre, we were told. 2,000, that was the figure, banded, chanted outside, that got people so animated. The report proves that nothing like it. 700 was the figure, but it's robust. And let me be clear, when I took over the leadership office, the cupboards were bare. There were no endless plans and projects for deliverable plans on Rounds Gardens or this site. Before my time again, this site was lauded as the next development site. The town hall. Don't know where those sites disappeared to. Again, Councillor Mackenzie alluded to other reports that have gone missing. Perhaps somewhere in the ether, there is a series of studies about the town hall site. To emphasise the apolitical aspect of this plan, let me emphasise areas like Hillmorton, Bilton and Dunchurch, they have been impacted enough. There are no Labour councillors shouting from that. We have let the evidence tell the story. For the first time, we've got an evidence-led approach to protect the Rainsbrook Valley. Instead of what was done previously, which was vague, we've now got something robust. As has been said, the Tri-Tax Phase 2, we've pushed back. Councillor Mackenzie, it's been a joy to work with you, and Councillor Robinson, Councillor Henderson. That land was pushed back. It wasn't Greenbelt, it was land previously allocated, or sorry, I should say safeguarded for development. And I'm delighted we've now got clear protection for sites such as the Brandon Stadium, the old Laurentians Rugby Ground, Kilsby Lane and Butlin Road. But I cannot finish without touching on this amendment that was put forward. Councillor Simpson-Vince, I believe you were first to laud the presence of this mythical amendment some time ago. Indeed, it's been trumpeted on your website for quite some time. Wow, what a disappointment. I can go further. Dare I say that I feel it's almost embarrassing to put forward a plan, an amendment to a plan on something so important without any semblance of professional or legal advice to support it. Councillor Ward, you talked about being bold. Being bold is not destroying the protections that we've just talked about, which would happen if an amendment went through for a plan that was destined to fail. There is huge risks of no plan. What hasn't been mentioned is with a reform-led Warwickshire County Council putting forward Lodge Farm. I could go on. This plan has been incredibly hard work, and I believe it's a good balance for the borough. Where we end up with, we've got to go through the consultation process, take it through to examination, but I want to finish with the last very final thank you to officers, to councillors that have collaborated, and particularly the portfolio holder that has led this process for many months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. If they are all the speakers in the debate, Councillor Robinson. Oh, I'm so sorry, Councillor.
So I do just want to say a couple of very, very quick things. It's always me. Well, I was going to start with Councillor Roodhouse, because I do know you're a councillor of long-standing within the borough. I think you were mayor during the time that the Rugby World Cup was in 1997, something like that. Because was it 99? Because there's a photo of you with... I was going to say, it was a long time ago for me, but we actually met back then. And I know you've done a lot working with residents, as have we, on the Rainsbrook Valley, and I am very grateful for that additional protection building on what came before. So I find myself in an interesting position, because we have a responsibility to all the residents of Rugby, we have a responsibility to our local residents, and we have a responsibility to those we work with on a regular basis, officers, colleagues, both on this side and on other sides. Now, my view And I've made no bones about this. I think that the way you do development is you do it at scale. And I think Halton is the example of that. And I want to put on record, I am not talking about Lodge Farm. That site would be a disaster. However, I do have some really serious concerns about some of the things within this plan. Because you've taken this dispersal strategy in order to, as was alluded to, spread out the risk, there is precious little in the way of additional infrastructure directly through this plan. There is no additional education provision whatsoever within this plan. I think there's one GP surgery, and part of the consequence of that is the dispersal nature, whereas if you deliver site at scale at sites like Halton or South West Rugby, you can bring that development and that infrastructure forwards. So I do think that from a certain perspective, the dispersal strategy was essentially flawed from conception. However, you are the administration. It is for you to make your case, for you to set policy, and for you to put it to this council with the support of residents. That is the decision you took. And then we come to the Reg 18 stage, and I think at the time, some of us said we should be looking at brownfield sites, we should be looking at not developing the Raisbrook Valley, we should be avoiding the Greenbelt. Many of those things are now in the Reg 19 stage, and again, I pay tribute to officers who I know have done an enormous amount of work in the background to get some of those things to those stages. So I think from that perspective, this version of the plan is better than what we had before at Reg 18 stage. Is it perfect? I'm going to agree with Councillor Matt. No, it isn't. But I don't think any plan will be perfect, and I think with any policy, it is often in hindsight that we can judge where it succeeds and where it fails. And I will be very intrigued to know when 5, 10 years down the line and whatever new authority replaces this place, I'm sure some councillors, in wherever it is, will be saying, well, why on earth did you do that at this stage? Because times change, times move on. But I have to deal with what we've got here now in the present. And so with a bit of a heavy heart, I will be voting for this. I will be voting to send it to Reg 19 stage, and then I will be responding to the inspector, and I will be encouraging everyone else to respond to the inspector. And there is one final point I want to make about engagement, and I'm going to be a little bit strange, and I'm going to misquote a 19th century Prussian philosopher by a chap called von Clausewitz. Wrote a few fascinating treatises, but one of the things he described was the relationship between conflict and politics, and he described warfare as the pursuit of policy by all other means. Now, I'm not about to declare war on the administration. However, I would gently suggest that campaigning is engagement by any other means.
Councillor Picker, thank you. Councillor Robinson, you have a right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure that everybody will be pleased to know I'm not going to keep you very long with this, mainly for fear of trying to do justice to everybody. I know that I can't, but I have made notes on what everybody has been saying, and I do want to say that I have been listening. And I will reflect on what's been said, not just in this part of the debate, but in the previous part of the debate as well. I will come back to what Councillor Roodhouse has said and just assure him that I will be contacting, myself and the Chief Officer will be contacting West Northants to gain that statement of common understanding around Rainsbrook Valley. And I would just echo what Councillor Roodhouse said, and actually what Councillor Picker has sort of hinted at as well. It doesn't stop here. This is a democratic, ongoing process. It is that marathon, not a sprint. And it's the job of the administration to steer that process. But the end result isn't just owned by us, it's owned by everyone. And that's one of the things that I'm very proud of in this process, and feel very privileged to work with the Chief Officer and the other very talented team in our planning development team, is that that's what we've done. And the changes through the course so far demonstrate that we are genuinely listening, we are genuinely being evidence-led. And I too, you've heard it from Liberal Democrats, you've heard it from Conservatives, you're going to hear it from Labour now. Please do engage in the consultation. If you do still have concerns, make your representations, because that is the purpose of the examination. And it may well need to change. I do rather hope that it won't receive the same level of damning response from the inspector as the 2019, but I hope. There's a couple of things I want to say, just a general point around the word that we have used around dispersal. Now, that word has been taken a little bit out of context and gathered it, and kind of there's a different meaning surrounding it now. So when we were initially talking about dispersal, we were talking about the additional sites and looking at and comparing that to the previous planning strategy, which was to kind of put all our eggs in one basket, and the large sustainable urban extensions that Councillor Picker has referred to. Actually, if you look at the data, that Rugby as a borough is currently split 75% urban to 25% rural. And when you look at this plan and the overall development of all the homes in it, guess what? 75% rural, urban, 25% rural. I just want to reflect back that actually Rugby as a town is still taking its fair share of development. This is not, Rugby. This is not urban versus rural. This is together. It's a holistic look, looking at all the evidence, and just to come back to then, because that's where for me, the crux of all this is around the strategy. And whether Rugby persists with the notion of these sustainable urban extensions. We don't have a 5-year land supply because that is failing us. It's not bringing forward affordable homes. Yes, it brings infrastructure to those sites and areas close to that site to mitigate the impact of that development, but it doesn't do anything for anywhere else. And actually, contrary to some of the statements that have been made and heard in this chamber, some of our villages and our village schools actually do need new homes, and they need new families to come in. There's a threat of those primary schools being lost. So we do need a balanced development. We've done our best to strike that balance in what we're bringing forward so far. If the next stage of the process refines it further, then so be it. Clearly, this plan, as it stands, is ready for that next phase. So, with that, can we go to a vote?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I think we should. So, there was a request for a recorded vote. Do we have 3 councillors who will support?
I will propose it, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we're all very enthusiastic about it. Have you got 3 names? Okay, thank you, Chief Officer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So again, please, if when I call your names, if you could respond with for, against or abstain. Starting with Councillor Barnett.
For.
Councillor Bennett. For. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Daly.
For.
Councillor Dumbleton.
For.
Councillor Edwards, Claire Edwards. Councillor Sam Edwards. For. Councillor Freeman. For. Councillor Garcia. Councillor Gilias. Councillor Harrington.
For.
Councillor Hassel. Councillor Henderson.
For.
Councillor Caradier.
For.
Councillor Dale Keeling.
For.
Councillor John Keeling.
For.
Councillor Lawrence.
For.
Councillor Lewis.
For.
Councillor Livesey.
For.
Councillor Maudis.
Against.
Councillor Mackenzie.
For.
Councillor Mistry.
For.
Councillor Morin.
For.
Councillor New.
For.
Councillor O'Rourke? 4. Councillor Parker?
4.
Councillor Picker? 4. Councillor Robinson? 4. Councillor Roodhouse? 4. Councillor Sanderson? 4. Councillor Sayani? 4. Councillor Simpson-Vince? 4. Councillor Srivastava? 4. Councillor Thompson?
4.
Councillor Timms? Councillor Trimble?
4.
Councillor Ward? And Councillor Willis? Abstain, thank you. And just to double check, I haven't missed anyone. No, good. So that is 2 abstentions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 31 for, so the vote is carried.
Thank you. The motion is carried. You may have noticed 1 or 2 people have got a bit silly because they're tired and have been sitting still for a long time. I'm proposing a 10-minute break, at which point anybody in the gallery who wants to be released from captivity can leave. You can come back at the end of 10 minutes if you want to, but there's an awful lot that the councillors who can't be excused, I'm so sorry, need to stay and do. So thank you very much for attending if you're on your way out. Thank you. And guys, back in 10 minutes, please. Thank you, councillors. As we move on to part 2 of what's becoming extreme democracy as we go on, and I just want to pay tribute to Councillor Hassel, who has sat over there with a number of broken ribs and a broken wrist and stayed so that she could deliver her speech and speak for her residents. So I think that's to be commended. I am going to suggest something. You can choose to ignore me at your peril, but you can choose to ignore me. What I'm suggesting is that for each of the, as we've got to 9:30 now, it's a very long agenda. Okay, a proposer, a seconder for each, obviously, and then very brief speeches, and only if you feel really moved to speak. That's my suggestion. And so I think we'll make it a 3-minute limit until if you have, and only if you have to. Okay, so we move on to item 6. To receive the report of extraordinary meeting of the Cabinet dated the 17th of December 2025. In submitting the report of Cabinet, if members wish to raise questions or to comment, will they please indicate they wish to do so when I call them. Councillor Morin, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 1 of the report titled Rugby Central Shopping Centre Acquisition and Intervention?
Madam Mayor, I will.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I'll second and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Morin, could you introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try and be brief as directed so sternly. And I'm also very conscious that we had a very good exchange on this matter at scrutiny. So, and I want to thank on the record, thank you for Councillor Lawrence. It was very good to have that sort of exchange and questioning of such an important topic. If I may just start slightly sort of tongue-in-cheek, completely acknowledging Councillor Hassel's predicament. I do wonder if the other Conservatives have perhaps gone to depart to another political party at this point now. And as has been rumoured, long rumoured, so let's see what comes out tomorrow. But if I may, turning back to something rather more serious, and this actually, for me, is a really, really important update, because this is the work that this administration has tried to focus on, which is getting hold of regenerating the town centre. And I think, to some extent, the voluminous level of report and papers indicate the work, the due diligence that is necessary for any public authority to undertake an investment of this magnitude. And that's where we are. This is a moment in time. This is an update. So without trying to repeat what I said at scrutiny, since taking over in June 24, trying to get hold of that, of the regeneration question that's been talked about for so many years, isn't easy. And for very obvious reasons, focusing on that first 6 acres of the town centre, we've done our best to engage with an owner that hadn't previously been engaged with. Now, I'm very conscious that there's going to be a private element, a confidential element to discuss some perhaps more numerical information, and I'm happy to do that. As I said, I will try and be brief, but Rugby Central is clearly a key part of the town centre. And our regeneration programme alongside Brotherhood House at one end, Cemex House at the other end, St Andrew's Church, other interventions. We can bring Rugby Town Centre, if you want, back to its former glory by removing some of the areas that hold it back. And without going into too much detail at this point, it's been a very challenging situation to engage with the owner of Rugby Central. They're an offshore owner. They are not invested in the scheme, either financially or metaphorically now, to improve it going forward. And it's really unique for the council to use its opportunity, its position to intervene. And that's how I'd present it. There's no desire to be the greatest shopping centre owner in the country, but there's an intervention to kind of disentangle, to right-size the shopping centre, to get it into a place where partners can come and work with the council. And there are partners wanting to do that, because that would then unlock NHS on the high street. It unlocks this opportunity for a £10 million centre of excellence for business skills in the town centre. But it really then turns the page on Rugby Town Centre as a centre that we can all feel proud of. It will also allow us to bring forward high-quality residential in the town centre, which is clearly part of the local plan that we've discussed. So really, 3 options at a high level that are being presented. One is a purchase. It's a purchase that's got to be done at the right price to represent best value for the public purse. At the other end of the stage, if an owner won't engage, and we're now at the point here hopefully tonight where we can confirm us to the next stage, then we are setting the ground for a CPO, as well as using the government's powers for high street rental auctions. Because the best thing to engage a difficult owner is to entangle them in regulation and to bring them to the table, which is what we can do. And then there's a middle ground. There's always a middle ground in life. And in that way, there could be some form of joint venture or partial purchase. The point being that we've got to put a line in the sand and say this 6 acres of prime town centre has to now come forward in a way that's beneficial to the wider town. So together with these activations of actually seeing demonstrable progress, we can start to give a positive picture to the town. I'll leave it there. I do really hope that there are any questions or any comments that I can respond to, and then equally cognizant that there'll be a confidential part to this debate on blue paper. And again, there I'm very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have more speakers? Councillor Roothouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a very quick one, really, to endorse that and the recommendations that are here on the report. Also, I welcome the fact that through Councillor Ward and the leaders' meeting that we had, that there is a chair there at the Town Centre Working Group, ready and waiting. I don't know whether the names have been passed through yet for that, because I think everybody in this chamber wants the same thing from Rugby Town Centre, and to actually do that. And I think if you're coming along to do that would be really good. At the same time, it's quite clear that with the owners of that shopping centre and the rest of it, if you like, they have no real regard for rugby, really, because it's part of an investment portfolio, and therefore we have to do everything in our power for the people of Rugby and their residents of how we take back control, to use that phrase, in relation to where we go forward with this. So I welcome what the leaders done, but also I welcome the fact that Councillor Ward, through the leaders' meeting, that we've now agreed that there is a space there. The sooner we can do that, the better, and which means all parties can be co-aligned behind where we go forward with this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Moran, would you like to add anything else?
I will, very, very briefly. Obviously, it was remiss of me not to put on record thanks and appreciation for Councillor Roothouse and all his contribution over the course of this year. But touching on the point with regard to the leaders group, there is a really important point here, because some elements of the Town Centre Regeneration Programme will not be complete by the end of this year. And as we get into local government reorganisation, I think it's really important. It's incumbent on everybody who's got an interest in the welfare and prosperity of the town, both prosperity in terms of financial, but also sort of social, and in terms of sort of pride and sense of place. We've got to start the journey. You know, Rugby Town Centre won't be regenerated overnight. There is a long process ahead, and the more that there can be that kind of cross-party support and really embedded determination for this initiative to succeed, then the greater the chance of that long-term success, because some of these interventions are really just the kind of almost like the catalyst project. And so going forward, in a unitary environment, whenever that comes and whatever that particular makeup will be, you know, it is so fundamental that rugby's representatives at that point do fight for rugby, because it is true to say we've not had that betterment and investment over the last 20 years. So thank you again. To echo Councillor Roodhouse's comments, really welcome Councillor Ward and colleagues, whether Conservative or whatever political group it may be in the weeks and months to come. The more we can have cross-party debate, the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moran. I now submit for confirmation and adoption the whole of the report. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those against, please show. Any abstentions? Thank you. Moving on, same ground rules for this one. In submitting, yes, same ground rules. So sorry, I'm reading the same thing twice. Very tired. Councillor Robinson, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 2 of the report, titled Town Centre Frontages and the Grant Scheme?
I so move. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Do I have a seconder for this, please?
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to second. Reserve
Thank
my right
you.
to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, very quickly to say, you know, we did have, I think, quite a productive conversation about this at Cabinet. I don't think that there's any controversy in this proposal. We have taken the lessons from running the shop frontages grant scheme previously. It's now a two-phase process. We're making sure that that builds in the capability to support businesses to help make it achievable for more businesses to get involved in the scheme. So we've taken forward the learning from last time and to kind of just echo what Councillor Marin has just said and to kind of position this within that bigger picture of making sure that we have a multifaceted strategy for the town centre regeneration, and this is yet another part of that jigsaw. So yeah, I hope there's no controversy in here and we can quickly go to a vote for you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, thanks for that. Just going slightly off topic, if you're in your motor car and you're driving down Church Street, turn left down Regent Street. Second on the right is Henry Street. Right on the halfway along on the left, lovely frontage of Rugby Theatre, because we know we're right in the middle of pantomime season, and so yes. And I promised my daughter, who's playing a leading role in Treasure Island, that she will give a quick advert that it runs till 1st of February. And get along there because it's really, really exciting. So
He's
there you go.
absolutely shameless. Thank you. Councillor Gillies, I have to say, I went to see it on Saturday. It was absolutely brilliant and she was outstanding. But you shouldn't do that. Moving swiftly along, Councillor O'Rourke, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 3 of the report titled GEC Recreation Ground Changing Rooms Development, please?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that?
Madam Mayor, I will second it.
Thank you. Councillor O'Rourke.
Been obviously to Cabinet, but just a bit of a brief history here. The Council has used this GEC recreation ground to support the delivery in sports and physical activities since 2007, when it signed a 50-year lease with the landowners. Then in September 2024, this council moved swiftly to formally purchase the site and secure the recreation ground's long-term future and continue to provide a much-needed and much-loved community asset. With the recreation ground now in the council's ownership, we are very pleased to bring this project forward for the development of the changing room pavilion to look to create additional community space and develop the sporting offer for both the existing sporting clubs who use the site and the wider community. This project has seen the council work with our community partners, particularly the Fareham Youth Partnership, to understand how the existing pavilion can enhance the sporting community offer. Working alongside professional architects, a design for a community room with storage and a kitchenette has been developed and presented to public during the Fareham Youth Partnership Family Fun Day. I just want to say thank you to all of those people that have been involved to make it the robust scheme it is, and to the ward councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Rourke. Councillor New.
Very briefly, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to second everything Councillor O'Rourke has just said, and we really welcome the extension to this facility. It's going to be a massive improvement for the community and really help a lot of local groups to have a facility that they can use for all ages. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor O'Rourke, would you like to take more time on it? Okay, that's fine. Councillor Claire Edwards, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 4 of the report titled Assets and Property Repairs Service, Transformation Journey, and oh, snappy title this, Transformation Journey and Resulting Budgetary Impact?
I so move, Madam Mayor.
Do I have a seconder?
I second. So I'll second that.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been a long evening, so I will be short, but I'm really pleased to introduce this report, which has gone to Cabinet already, and ask for your indulgence, really. This is a good news story. In the last 12 months, the repairs service as part of our housing portfolio has gone through a real transformation. We're not quite there yet, but we are so close to it. And I'm really proud of the work that all our officers have done to improve things, and particularly to Councillor New for her support as well, because this is very much a joint effort. We started the year with less than 60% knowledge of what our properties were like. That clearly wasn't acceptable. We're now pushing forward and we're at 87%. We've still got a little bit more to go, but that's great. But that means that we've got to invest time and effort in actually repairing our properties to make sure they're as good as we possibly can. We are so close to doing that, and I'm really pleased to report our progress on that and report for future progress in a future meeting. So ask your indulgence to allow us to release a little bit more money in this year's budget so we have a balanced budget and can do those repairs at pace. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor New, is that the legacy one or a new one? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'd just like to thank officers, council staff for all the hard work and effort they've put into this transformation journey and the benefits this will bring to our residents, and also the stock condition survey that will ensure our houses are fit for the future. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say what a brilliant job you've been doing this transformation of actually improving the service. But I actually just wanted to highlight, wow, where we started from and how bad it was, not really knowing what condition our houses were in, not having done all of those repairs. And so you've done an incredible job to get to where you've got to from an incredibly low base.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Edwards, would you like to add anything?
Just thank you, and to thank our staff. They've pulled it out and they've worked incredibly hard, and I'm really proud of them. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I am submitting for confirmation and adoption the whole report. So in moving for confirmation and adoption of the whole report, we can do it en bloc, or think about this. Upon any member request, a vote can be taken separately in respect of each report. Does any member wish for a vote to be taken in respect of each individual report? Well, there we go. That's good. Okay, so now we're moving on then. Those in favour, please. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? So I now submit for confirmation and adoption the whole of the report. Thank you. So C is the report of Audit and Ethics Committee, which happened on the 24th of November 2025. Same rules as it's submitted. If anybody wishes to speak, just put your light on, let me know. Councillor Mystery, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 1 of the report?
Madam Mayor, I move so.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor O'Rourke. Councillor Mystery.
Just quick 30-second. Audit and Ethics Committee have always had an independent chair and vice chair. And John Eves, I believe is retiring. And you'll be pleased to know that whoever sat on the Audit and Ethics Committee, like myself and Councillor Roodhouse, who've been there for probably 15, 16 years on the committee, to welcome Chris Green, who used to work here, back as a vice chair. So it's nice to see him back, and we've got a lot of respect for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any speakers? Councillor, would you like to reply to yourself, or are you happy with that? Okay, thank you very much. Right, so I now submit for confirmation and adoption the whole of that report. So those in favour, please. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? The motion's carried. Okay, now we move on to item 7, notices of motion. Councillor Garcia, will you please move the motion set out at item 7 of the agenda, notice of which has been given under Standing Order 11?
Yeah, sorry. Right, I'd just like to give you a little bit of background before I move the motion.
Sorry, Councillor, I just need to get a seconder before you launch into your speech. It's okay. Can I take a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor O'Rourke. Please, Councillor Gussie.
I'm listening this time. Right. As you may be aware, motor neurone disease is a fatal, rapidly progressing disease that affects the brain and spinal cord. It kills a third of people within a year of diagnosis and more than half within 2 years. MND leaves people locked in a failing body, unable to move, talk, and eventually breathe. The cost of converting your home to an accessible accommodation for people suffering from MND is very expensive and in some instances prohibitively so. We need a quick response from local government to our needs. Access to timely and affordable home adaptations is therefore vital to ensure people with MND can live safely, independently, and with as much dignity as possible in the time they have left. However, new research from the MND Association has found that the Disabled Facilities Grant, which funds home adaptations, is largely unfit for people with rapidly progressing conditions. The MND Association research shows that the average wait time for a vital home adaptation in England is 375 days. By that time, 1/3 of people living with MND will have died. In the case of the person who brought this to me, who's living in our borough, he had an occupational therapist come out to him from Myton Hospice, and that he worked with a partnership which is a Warwickshire Council organisation, and was asking for help for anything to help with a conversion. They received a phone call from them and told him that there was a 13-month wait before he could even be assessed. And as the person said, well, I could be dead by then. The response was, well, if the condition gets worse, phone them and we'll put you on an urgent list, which needless to say isn't very helpful, but then was followed up with, and the grant isn't retrospective. I actually don't think any of us would want to be treated like that. And actually, it isn't just the patient, it's for the family as well. At a time when you must be at your lowest depths to have to deal with the bureaucracy that we have to deal with, I just don't feel is acceptable. So that is why I'm bringing this notice of motion. Thank you. I hope you can all accept it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Rourke.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Garcia, for inviting me tonight to second your notice of motion. Everyone in this chamber will have lived experience of the challenges facing individuals with long-term conditions like this. Therefore, it is really vital that there is a strong collaboration with all of the partners. And I've read through the notice of motion. I've done a little bit of research as well. And I do promise you, as the sort of lead on health for the council at Rugby Place, supported by the Chief Exec, we will start asking Warwickshire County Council about what role they're playing in delivering improved services for our local residents. One of the sort of absolutely priorities for Place at the moment is to do everything we can to keep people in their homes and provide services in their homes or near to their homes. We know there's really big pressures on acute services. So it's a no-brainer, but there seems to me we need to be holding our partners accountable. Warwickshire County Council do sit on the Rugby Partnership, and I will speak to the Chief Exec who chairs that group, because I think we haven't heard a lot from them about what they're doing, I'll be quite honest with you. I think as a borough we're playing our part, and now they need to play their part, and we need to probably get regular reports about who's coming through from rugby and how long it's taken. And I think that, along with Jerry's group, the sort of patient charter stuff, I think between us all, we can do better for local people in these very challenging and difficult situations, and their families as well. We rely so heavily on these people. So thank you for allowing me to do this. Thank you.
Councillor Roothouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry to prolong it a bit, but this is a really important motion, and can I thank Councillor for bringing it forward. For me, the last paragraph where it talks about this motion affirms the Council's commitment to partnership working for compassion and so on and so forth is really important in around that. And DFG, Disability Facilities Grant, is always a difficult area. And I've dealt with a couple of cases recently in my ward where the person was going through hospice treatment and all the rest of it, and there's quite clearly issues around getting equipment in, not just for M&D, but the whole process. And the other bit is after the process as well, which has been raised to me, that all the equipment's still in the house, and the partner was just in totally bits because they couldn't take it away for about a month. So just having to live there with the bed in the front room and all this sort of stuff. So there are issues around this about compassioning and listening. And certainly I think there are things that should be done and could be done, and hence the motion that was passed at this council last time in relation to building that particular forum and bringing that. This is an area where we can feed this through and take that. I'm sure Councillor O'Rourke, myself and yourself will be taking that battle onwards and upwards to there. Because I do fear for DFG, to be honest, about the funding for that. There's also something called the Better Care Fund and Integrated Care. That does not get inflation increases, and that puts massive pressure onto the DFG, at the same time. But I think there are things that we can and should do, and they're usually, if anybody has looked at my story, they're usually the simple things, really, and it doesn't take much. I do know people that I've had in the past who've had MND and how crippling it can be going through that process, to the other side. So it's something, and I repeat, thank you for the motion, because I think it reminds us of our humanity and the stuff that we should be doing as well. And I know, the Chief Officer for Housing and the rest of it is passionate about this as well. So it's something that we can progress with, I think, and we should progress because it's the only right thing to do.
Absolutely, thank you, Councillor O'Rourke. Councillor New.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd also like to thank Councillor Garcia and Councillor O'Rourke for bringing this to our attention. I recently became friends with a family who lost their son through this devastating and cruel disease, and time isn't on their side. There isn't time to wait for these adaptations, and we really need to make sure that people get these things in as quick as possible, because it's not just during the disease and what the family goes through, but also afterwards, the support the family will need dealing with the loss and the pain that they've suffered through this whole process. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Moran.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think just something so important is important. An issue so important is important. It's therefore incumbent on me to put on the record complete support for this. It's absolutely the right thing that the council should do, long overdue. And thank you very much.
Thank you. I now submit this to the vote, please. Those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. I don't think we need to go through the next bit. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. And well done, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Mackenzie, will you please move the motion set out at item 7B, please?
I so move.
Do I have a seconder? I will second. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to speak?
Thank you. I won't take too long, but this motion is really born out of a process of frustration, really, trying to work with Severn Trent to upgrade the infrastructure that we have, and in particular, this has been about the Dunsmore and Lem Valley ward areas. So we have sewage releasing in some villages up to 180 times a year into the local watercourses, into gardens, into the roads. It's disgusting, and it gets worse because it discharges in one village and that flows downstream, and the next village discharges into it, and on it goes. And you engage with Severn Trent, and they come out and they go, oh, yes, yes, and they go, yeah, we've got to go away and look at it, and it's like dealing with the blob almost. They never actually say, yes, this is what we're doing, or even when they do say this is what we're doing, they don't give you a time scale so that, yes, we're going to upgrade your sewage pipe from the village, but that was like 2 years ago, and we still don't have any upgrade because fundamentally the pipe isn't large enough, and so the pumping station can't move the volume that's there, so the tankers come in, or it just gets dumped, just gets literally dumped out into the stream. So I did a lot of work with parishes in this area, got lots of evidence, wrote to Severn Trent with all of this, and I've had back a holding email saying, thank you for your letter, we're looking into it. And that has been it. I mean, in the interim, I have been out with one of their staff in one of the villages, and they've basically gone and looked at it and gone, yeah, but we can't give you any time scales on what you're doing. So I am trying to take it up a gear and ask the chief officer if he will write on behalf of the council to censor really Severn Trent and say, would you please get on with giving an answer, with giving time scales to actually fixing the problem and actually sizing the infrastructure, because a lot of this infrastructure as well, we've got the last local plan housing to come in the southwest, which hasn't come in yet, and the infrastructure is not even meeting what's already there. So this is why I put the motion. It's literally out of frustration because Severn Trent will not actually act in any kind of timely manner. So I do commend this to the Chamber, that we do try and put a bit more pressure on them, because it's absolutely unacceptable to be releasing sewage into streams and rivers. It's unacceptable to having tankers up and down next to people's properties 24/7, and recently stuck in the mud and having to be pulled out by tractors in the middle of the night down a country lane next to some houses. It's just not good enough, and we need to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Please, Councillor Simpson-Binns.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you haven't had an answer from them. They're really difficult to deal with. And one of the problems that we also have is that they get told about all planning applications. You know, they're a consultee. They're supposed to come back on planning applications. And I know certainly in Stretton, the Taylor Wimpey site that's being built there, they came back and said, yeah, that's fine. And I spoke to Taylor Wimpey and they went, yeah, well, Severn Trent told us it's fine. But actually, the pipe from the Taylor Wimpey down to the main pipes was fine for capacity, but it was the one it's joining that's not fine. And they don't look that far ahead. They don't look at it, and they just look at the immediate site and go, yeah, that's fine. And it does the thing of going from village to village. I was in Princethorpe a couple of weeks ago about 7 o'clock at night, and it was absolutely pouring with rain, as it has been for most of the last few weeks. And I was on the talking to someone in the village and just watching the road, the brook come up and start to come across the road. And I'm like, I'm going to need to move my car. And then the tanker came down the road to go to the pumping station to start dealing with all the water that needed to come out. And when Princethorpe floods, it then goes down to Frankton, because that's kind of the next one downstream. And yeah, it's just frustrating. So yeah, if we can get any response, that's brilliant. But it might need more than, maybe the letter requests a meeting and just see if we can pull them in and get something with that. I presume you're going to be fine with that. Because it's just, yeah, they just don't look beyond the immediate, and that really doesn't help anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Please, Councillor.
Just really to echo the frustrations I was nearly late tonight because of the burst water main in Rugby Road in the middle of Dunchurch. We're fed up with a sticking plaster, the serial underinvestment across the borough, and the absolute failure really of planning. As a result, we've seen pensioners in the Lime Tree Village. One of the first bits of casework I took on as a councillor was having to try and help them to get a fix for sewage being pumped through a care home grounds. It's just totally unacceptable. And the sticking plaster we got was they've installed a storage tank to, and that was, I've been here now, what, 2-3 years now? So yeah, so we're, I think we need to move this motion because then hopefully at least Severn Trent might start listening to us. Thanks for your listening.
Thank you. Councillor Moran. And then Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I was just going to add on that, ironically enough, even when work is actually done, so at Corson Spinney where work is being done, it's done in such a kind of a way that kind of almost like disregards community concerns and such a lack of kind of forward planning or forward communication with local residents as to what's happening. So the Corson Spinney Woods that we voted through enhanced protection for earlier in the new local plan. Ironically enough, hordes and hordes and local residents thought that it had been almost desecrated because of the level of destruction that had been put forward. And then when engaging and kind of challenging with Severn Trent, the attitude is very much that they're above it all. That they don't have to deal with kind of matters like planning and kind of engagement and consultation. So I think, yeah, all power to the Chief Executive, and I think hopefully we can bring them to order.
Thank you. Councillor Harrington, please.
Thank you. I'm quite free to speak about this now because I don't work Severn Trent. So, for me personally, I think it's been run by accountants. I think they need to look into this because I worked on the consented sewer overflow projects. They should put more information in there. Yes, tanks are there to help out in bad circumstances. But I think I'm here, the example of Severn Trent, had an email back tonight. I've been waiting for manhole to be fixed, and that's since May last year. So that's just one thing which goes with it. I think personally, I know James Jessix has taken over from Liv Garfield because she's on the wind down because I still keep emailing her. So what I would suggest is I think this needs to go out with a statement or and also go to the press because at the moment, if they're not listening and they're not responding, because also we have a council email address we have, and they should be coming back to us on that, and that hasn't been great either, and I've also gone back to them about that as well. So personally, I'll support you whatever I can. If you want any advice, just let me know.
Thank you. Councillor Willis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to add voice to what we're already hearing. I think, as everybody knows, I'm not a huge fan of Severn Trent, and I think in public I've called them out, except they weren't in the room. So actually I was talking to an empty chair. However, there has been a glimmer of light in the shape of community officers who have been appointed and have started to engage. It's the start of a process, but I think we need to be in at the start of that process. And we need perhaps to bring this is the Climate Emergency Working Group, which I've maintained my membership over the last 12 months. Was I meant to? I don't know. But I suggest, we perhaps bring it there and perhaps as a wider flooding element, because thankfully as yet this January we haven't seen the results of what happened when Severn Trent don't pump the drainage, the sewage drainage around the village, because we need to catch it. And you're spot on, and take it offline, whatever we need to do, more than happy to collaborate on and taking that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It sounds like a lot of support to get this through. So I am going to put this to the proposer who is going to speak.
Sorry, I just wanted to use my right to reply, which was to say thank you to everybody for the support in the room. I just wanted to pick up on Councillor Simpson-Vince thing about trying to get a meeting with them. We have taken them to the climate change working group. They did come. I have had meetings with them out in the field, and I still don't get any answers because they don't send anybody at a high enough level who actually has an answer. All I ever get is, we're looking into it, I'll get back to you. And the poor chap, he must be so fed up with me, and probably lots of councillors across the patch, but nobody seems to give him any information higher up the system. So I would welcome a meeting, but I don't welcome a meeting at that level. I welcome a meeting at a much higher level, if we can push for that, because it's absurd to have, yet again, people who just don't know what they're talking about coming to a meeting with us.
Thank you, Councillor. We think, talking about escalating, would scrutiny have a part to play in that? Thank you. Please, Councillor. Okay. Thank you. Right, we are moving to the vote then. Those in favour, please. Thank you. Unanimous, I believe. Thank you. Yeah. Now we move to Councillor Sanderson. Will you please move the motion set out in 7C, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will move the motion before Council.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Trimble, thank you very much. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pavement parking is being sort of moving up the agenda for some time now. Unfortunately, the last government sat on a report for about 8 years and didn't progress it. I'm pleased to say the new government, after 18 months, has progressed it. One of the things that's been of concern, I got a lovely letter off of John Slinger, telling me all the things that the Safety Minister had done, but he completely didn't mention pavement parking. And I think because possibly he's not happy with what the Minister's come up with, or perhaps he needs a bit of a nudge. But what the problem appears to be, and Living Streets have picked this up quite a bit, is it's not an all-England scheme. It's not an all-England and Wales scheme, unlike the scheme that's been introduced in Scotland, which covers the whole of Scotland. And because it doesn't cover the whole, it's being very much left to the discretions of each highway authority. So we could have the ridiculous situation of South Warwickshire says yes, North Warwickshire says no. West Northants says yes, Leicester says no. And you will get this patchwork of discretionary schemes that are not pulling the whole proposal together. And it is a real concern. If you're blind, if you're disabled, if you've got kids in a buggy and you can't get around the cars because they covered 3/4 of the pavement, which is quite happened as cars have got bigger, that's what's happening. Or you get people causing an obstruction by actually parking on drop curbs, which is against the highway code, but they do it. But by parking on a drop curb, that stops someone like myself or somebody in a wheelchair being able to get off that pavement and then get on, and get around the obstacle. Again, the real problem, most mobility vehicles only have a 3-inch clearance. And if you've only got a clear 3-inch clearance, a 5-inch pavement is a real obstacle and could lead to damage to your vehicle. So, yes, that's why I think we need to press the county and the MP to say, why haven't we got at least an all-England scheme, rather than this patchwork of discretions, which I think will just cause as many problems as it solves. Thank you for that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, if I could even say your name, I know you so well, forgive me. and then Councillor Freeman, and then Councillor Thompson. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, sorry, when everything is happening, I was a bit disruptive going around the patch here because I'm having a bad knee at the moment. I couldn't keep my knee in the same place. Right. This is a very good motion because I was thinking about it for a long time since I moved into Cotton Park in 2022. Originally, before that, I lived in Bilton. We have a Bilton Green where you have community space, you have parks and everything around it. But when I moved into Cotton Park, everything is concrete. And the concrete spaces have very big spaces for the community to enjoy. But some people who can overpower others, who don't have community values, put the car on the pavement. Now, in 2022, when I moved into Cotton Park, I used to see the cars are half parked on the road and other two tires would be on the pavement. Nowadays, the whole car is on the pavement. And there is a roundabout. I believe Jill Simpson, Councillor Simpson Wins know about that roundabout, where in 2022, there was no car parked on the roundabout. Nowadays, you can see around 4 cars parked on the roundabout. And the worst part is, every day, the police force, the police cars goes all the way down the Cotton Park 3 or 4 times. I see 3 or 4 cars every day. None of these officers stop the car and ask anyone why this is parked like this. Yes, it is a county matter, but there are some discretionary powers which police has where you can't mount a car on the pavement and also you can't drive the car on the pavement. So there are places where, in my ward, people tend to park on the corner of the pavement. So that means they have to travel all the way on the pavement to that corner. These are happening for a while, so I wrote to the Safer Neighborhood team. And they came, and then I took them all around the ward, and I showed them around. And they promised me that they will write to the residents saying, these are the powers we have, we might use it, so don't park it. This happened probably 7-8 months ago. And I have sent 2 different reminders to the police team where they haven't sent the letter. This is where the problem is. You can have hundreds of policies, hundreds of laws in place, but you have people to monitor it. If you come to Cotton Park, just near Aldi in Central Park Drive, you can see big lorries parked in the double LOs for more than 7-8 hours, right? We don't have anyone to monitor it. And if you ask the county, they would say, right, yeah, we have 15 parking attendants to maintain the whole of Warwickshire. On a normal day, they only have leaving annual leaves and sick leave. You only have probably 6 whole-time employees to monitor the whole of Warwickshire, not Rugby, the whole of Warwickshire. This is where the whole system fails. Sorry, Madam Mayor, I'm a bit emotional at the moment. And I believe we need to put some full stop to this. But look at Scotland. Scotland people I think they are much more cleverer at the moment because they completely stopped parking anywhere inside Scotland. And why don't we bring this to this ward?
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Madam
you.
Mayor.
Councillor Freeman.
This particular motion struck a chord with me because when I was elected, I was advised that councillors deal with 4 things: parking, pavements, plants and poo. I live this every day. I live very close to 2 of the schools in the borough, Riverside Academy and Avon Valley School. I have residents who live near Boughton Lee schools. I have other residents that live near the Brownsover Community School. The problem of parking, my goodness, the bad behaviour that I've witnessed, it seems as a collective psychosis when dropping kids off and collecting them from school. I've witnessed large SUVs mount pavements and park on the pavement on the corner of a junction. I've witnessed near misses. I've witnessed children trying to cross the road, having to dodge service vehicles and all sorts of things because some idiot has parked right on the junction, obstructed the line of sight. I've witnessed stand-up fights between residents and parents. I personally have put up with fools parking across my driveway. Funnily enough, they only do it once. I can't think why. But I've had complaints. The complaints come into my inbox at the beginning of every term. Someone's parked across my drive. Someone's parked on the green. Someone's parked on the glebe. A lot of people have parked on the glebe. Someone's threatened me because I've asked them to move their car. Anything that can mitigate that is very welcome. One of the issues is we have schools that are in the borough where people have to travel. I anticipate this being a huge problem at Avon Valley in the coming years as they plan to expand. Because there are no more local children who can walk to Avon Valley, they'll all have to be driven in. I estimate up to 600 journeys a day. It's unbearable to even think about that. So I like the look of this motion. I don't know what the solution is in the long term. It comes down to enforcement. I've written several times to the county asking for enforcement. I'm told, yes, we have the powers, but we don't have the resources. At one point, they assured me that while they were keen to enforce, they had 20 wardens available for 400 sites. Do the maths. So I'm very supportive of this motion, but goodness knows how we're going to get it all sorted out in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, do you have anything new to add?
I do. So I am somebody who uses a mobility scooter, and I have very first-hand experience of both the problems with parking with schools, parking with poor quality pavements, being forced into the road, not being able to get down. And I think one of the things that you get from that experience is how, as a disabled or differently abled person, you are so devalued by the community. It is a strong message of you don't count, you're not worth anything, you're a bit of an inconvenience. And I think that when we actually start looking at how we're going to get this tackled, which is going to be a key between having enforcement and having the rules, we actually have to start really engaging with the disabled community, and that might include children who are sort of in wheelchairs. It may include older people. It may include people who have mobility problems from a whole range of reasons. And I think it's taking away the fact that as a community, I think Warwickshire County Council, in their role, needs to understand it is devaluing a part of the community, and that's not acceptable. We all pay our taxes. We'd like to have our service.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, absolutely agree with everything that's been said. Just a couple of things. I wonder whether we could add, I don't know if it's a friendly amendment or addition. We're talking about disability here as well, and something that drives me insane is disabled parking spaces, and you see people parking in them that don't have disabled parking badges. Okay, you could say you don't always know for certain, but just I know firsthand that there's people that park in disabled spaces that shouldn't be, quite frankly. So I wonder whether that could be added. And another little point I was thinking, because we're talking here, county council, police, all this sort of thing, national government, I wonder whether we could do something as a borough council in terms of from a comms side about could we do something, putting out a message there of highlighting some of these issues and just kind of bringing it to people's attention. I wonder whether that can be something, maybe it can be a separate, for a separate point, but I just wanted to make that. Thank you.
Councillor Wood, there's something in me that's wondering whether some of the issues that we've spoken about are actually criminal issues. And to add things to this may be challenging at the minute. Let's get this bit done first, yeah? And let's think about how it might be strengthened afterwards. If there's nobody else, there is somebody else. Councillor Trimble, please.
Yes, excuse me not standing. I just like to tell you about an experience a friend of mine had. She lived in Hunter Street and was on a mobility scooter, and coming up Cambridge Street, because of the cars parked on the pavement and also it was bin day, she was forced to be in the road, and she was actually stopped by a policeman who challenged her and reprimanded her for being in the road, and she said, well, how am I supposed to ride on the pavement when it's with the cars being there and bins? And then he had to admit that she was right. There was nowhere else for her to go apart from in the road.
Thank you. That's an awful lived experience, isn't it? When that's the only thing you're left with. I'm going to move to the vote, unless Councillor Sanderson would like to reply.
Just a quick right to reply. Yes, I'm really glad to hear that members from across the chamber are supportive of the motion. Clearly, I've kept it on the subject area because it's where I feel the minister has been deficient or the MP hasn't chased it up. In terms of other road problems, well, it's coming to scrutiny, so you have an idea. You can look at other items, but I would ask you not to over-egg the pudding, not to try and put too much into it. Try and stay focused on the issues that are a part of the motion, because that's where I think our strength will lie. Certainly, Living Streets is a good example of a national charity that has been working on this, and it's well worth looking at some of their documentation of what are the real problems for people being forced to go down the middle of the road, like the lady Trish mentioned, and then getting told off for being there. Oh, how ridiculous can you be? You know, our streets are quite narrow. You get the wheelie bin, a car parked on there, where do we go? And again, if you want a good example of drop curbs and how they can work, can I suggest you look at Eastland School, Safer Routes to School project, which what the County Council has done on that is to encourage people to go to alternative parking, and they've put in a single white line at every drop curb. And now I regularly go up and pick my granddaughter up from school, and I have yet to see it being abused by people dropping the kids off at school. So there are solutions. We just need ministers to give it a turbocharge it a bit so that it actually works for the rest of England. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'm taking this to the vote now. Those in favour, please show. Excuse me. That looks to be unanimous to me. Okay, we move on to exclude the public under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972. Excuse the croaky voice. Under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of information defined in paragraphs 1 and 2 of Schedule 12A of the Act. I so move. Who will second the motion?
I will second that.
Thank you. Those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's unanimous. So, can we stop the live stream now, please?